So for me, we've talked about this for a month, right? So it's kind of like anticipation and planning.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure that when I was doing this, I was doing it correctly for me, but with kind of a larger intent. It's to kind of, better manage and inform people of how someone like me, who may be perceived as more toxic or more masculine or more alpha than the
That's exactly what I think about when I think about when I
than
look
the
at you.
person next to me. But it was really interesting. So the last, I don't know, 2 weeks, right? The lead up to the beginning of the year, and then this last week, everyone's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing?" I'm like, well, I got
Doing
this.
for what?
Just in general, like everyone's in town, they want to hang out, like we have family, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
Everybody wants to get together. So they're like, what are you doing this weekend? And I said, well, I got this podcast coming up. And then I'm, well, whose podcast? I'm like, it's Steven's. What's it called? Life with Perspective. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm interested in, just kind of sharing and just communicating. And, he and I always can sit there and have a conversation literally for 8 hours. And I'm not anticipating this conversation going that long, but I would anticipate this conversation going for a few. Yeah, it could go for a few hours. And I'm actually, really excited. And they're like, oh, what's the next question? What's the podcast on? I said, toxic masculinity. What is everyone's response? You know me. What's everyone's response?
I don't know.
Interesting. You're talking about that?
Oh.
Right? Right? So I'm just like,
oh God.
this is the reason, right? Like, this is the reason why we're here. This is the reason why we're talking about it, because it's just misconceptions, man. Like it's
not misconceptions. I can tell you as a friend, it's not a misconception. So with that, I think you're clear. You're clear what you want to say, and you're clear how you want to say it, right?
I'm also clear on the need to say it.
Fair. But you can't quantify anybody's need for it. All you're here to do is share your thoughts on it.
This is for me.
Yeah.
Right. This is me telling my story.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why it's important. Right. Because it's not me projecting my beliefs. It's not me. I think through this, we're probably going to end up touching on a few things that you and I don't agree on.
Yeah.
And I'm not a religious person, but I feel like you're like a never ever religious person, and I'm a never religious person.
No, what's the difference between that? The
Because
never ever compared to never?
I will go to church, right? I acknowledge that there's religion, and that I mean,
I'll go to church. I'm just not going to go consistently for the sake of the dogmatic. Like, I need to be in this sacred space.
No. Yes. So I think we do agree on that.
Okay.
I think that's kind of where
I'm not going to go to church and catch on fire or be like,
right. But we had this conversation driving to a set one time, and it was like, is your views beliefs or values or morals? Like, which one did you say was rooted in religion?
So religion is morals, because with religion, you get a set of beliefs that is your religion.
Right. And I'm sure that most things, like foundationally, even like if you're saying like, toxic masculinity is rooted in patriarchy. Patriarchy comes from religion. It's rooted in religion, right? It comes from the religious standing. Like if you're either Christian or Muslim, those two things kind of glorify the man and, push the woman down into a lower class of that relationship.
But which is a fair statement.
Right?
Yeah.
So everything is kind of rooted in that mentality. I don't necessarily agree with you on the moral side of it. I think morals come from you. I think it comes from who you are, right?
Well, the belief of what's right and wrong.
Right.
So
yes, but
the reason hold on, let's take it one at a time. So the reason why I say that, right, is morals is a belief system.
yes.
Where did your belief system come from, and how did your belief system give you the distinction between what's right and wrong? You don't have it. You could create one and say, my morals are this, because it is my understanding that this, and I'm judging you now, this is wrong. The reason why I say I don't have morals and I have core values is because I don't know what's right and wrong for you. I only know what's right and wrong for me. And even those I have to question and say, I once thought it was wrong for me to do this, and now I think it's right. I used to think this was right for me to do, and now I believe it's wrong because of learning. So then that's how I kind of pass those. If the reality of it is I'm always going to be on one of those sides and they might continuously change as I get older, then why say it's a moral? I would just say, great, my core values drive me to make that decision as I get older, but my core values have to mean something to me. They have to be something that I truly stand for and that I believe in, because those are going to be the pillars that I kind of try to start building everything else on.
Understand.
So then
Acknowledge.
I don't have morals because I don't have a doctrine or a set of beliefs that guide me to judging you on something that's right and wrong.
Sure. Yeah. And I would define it slightly differently. Like my morality comes from probably a basis in religion because I was raised Catholic, right? But I don't bring Catholicism into my household, right? Like I'm not going to.
How dare you?
I feel like, educating yourself on all things and, even from a religious standpoint, eventually I may take my kids to a Christian church.
But okay, so let's look at that. Why would you choose not? Why would you say I don't bring Catholicism into my household? The reason is
Because I don't believe in it. Like I don't have that belief system, right? Like I don't, for a different podcast, but
fair.
To go down that rabbit hole for 2 seconds. In high school, I was raised Catholic, yeah, I didn't go through confirmation, right? But I had my communion and all that other stuff. I was working through what I thought, religion was. So everyone kind of goes or tries to find a different sense. So this is the 90s. Like books are still really relevant. I went and bought the Satanic Bible to read it, not to be a Satanist.
No, to educate yourself. Yeah.
To educate myself. Yeah. What have you ever read the Satanic
No,
Bible?
I haven't.
It's actually really hard to find now. But I would love everyone to have read that book. So Anton LaVey.
We might find it if we go down Ensenada because there is a museum down that way.
Sure.
We'll go.
And it's just such a great book because when you actually read it, Anton LaVey started that church because he was raised Catholic in a traveling circus.
Oof.
So when you read
that sounds fun.
Yeah, when you read the forward of the book, it's him telling his story on, I was in this traveling circus with my family. Every week is a new city. Every town we go to, we do the circus Friday, Saturday, and we see all these people and just doing really morally reprehensible things.
Oh, he said that.
He's saying this.
Okay.
And then on Sunday, he's going to church with everyone and they're all being forgiven for their sins that they just committed, 24 hours ago, whatever it was.
Sign me up. I'm ready for that.
Right. So he started the Satanic Church because it was the counterpoint to that. He did not believe in that.
Got it.
He believed in taking the ownership.
So from you, and obviously this is relevant to what we're going to talk about today, how did that give you perspective for the sake of the other item that we'll discuss later? How did that influence your life, reading that, in the sense of, great, that gave me a different way of looking at something from Catholicism, but it also had to influence something else within you as you seek, as you look forward and you like traverse through life?
Well, even as a younger person, I just see things that I didn't agree with and that people would use as a crutch to justify it away, right? Like I was 12 or 13 when my parents got divorced, and my parents got divorced because my mom was a lesbian, right?
Okay.
And that was, again, mind you, this is the 90s, and it was a really different time. And that was viewed as to be like the most demonic, awful thing ever to have existed. And even when my parents went through their divorce proceedings in Wisconsin, it's a 50-50 state. And knowing the very little that I knew about it at the time, the judge made my mom live within X amount of miles, 50 miles, whatever it was, to where we were, which means she couldn't even move home. Like they just did everything they could to demoralize or demean her within the means of the law.
But it's your, you don't know why. It's more you as an adult looking back and saying the only thing that makes sense is that because she was pretty open, and obviously she's leaving your father because maybe she chose all that, right?
Yes, but the point to that is even then, I was being objective, right? Like I was really angry at my mom for doing what she did, but I was probably equally as angry at my father for handling it the way he handled it.
Right.
Like he just completely vilified her, and I didn't agree with that, right? I just didn't. Like we're sitting in a room full of people. I'll never forget this. It's the middle of summer. I'm cutting my grandparents' lawn, and my grandmother comes out, and she's visually upset. And I come in the house, and I go into what's like the little like viewing room. It's where my grandfather had a couch and a TV, and
Oh, like a day room?
not necessarily, but sure, yeah.
Or more like just a formal living room?
It wasn't even a formal living room. I think it was a bedroom that they just converted into like a TV room.
Oh, got
right.
it.
So he would fall asleep in there and watch TV or whatever. And my father's in there, my brother's in there, my grandfather's in there, and my grandmother's my father, grandmother, grandfather, and brother are in there. And my dad's visually upset, my grandmother's visually upset. My grandfather not so much, and my brother obviously had no clue what was going on. I walk in, and my grandma's like, your dad has something to tell you. I'm just standing there.
You said your grandfather?
My grandmother.
Grandmother, got it.
Your father has something to tell you. And I said, okay. She's like, you want to sit down? And I said, no, I'm okay. Just standing there. Okay. My dad's like, so your mom and I are getting divorced because she's a lesbian. And can't tell you anything he said after that because it was just, everything's awful. She's a bad person. He's hysterical. My grandmother's hysterical. My brother is...
Is he telling you this like as he had just found out, or
Stephen, I don't know.
push this away from you just a little bit so it's in front of you?
I don't know.
There you go. Much
He
better.
was... We had left for like an entire summer. And I don't know if this is when I came back or if this was kind of after that. My parents were trying to figure out, I think, what was going on.
Do you feel like this was a difficult memory? That's why it's so kind of choppy for you to recall?
Yeah, no, for sure.
Okay.
And that's, again, at that point, like I was probably slightly more mature than my age and I was handling things differently. And in that moment, like seeing my brother so vulnerable and he's hysterical because everyone else is hysterical, I probably cried, but I was just like, okay. And I went back outside and cut the grass, right? Like it's
a very strange response, to be
Sure.
honest. So I'm assuming that it has to be some sort of trauma response.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
the only
yeah.
thing that makes sense.
correct. And, I've never gone through that or tried to figure it out. It's
Right.
not even that I don't want to relive it. It's just that I've never felt the need to. I have processed the emotions for those two people separately, independently with them, and probably in a better place with them individually, but specifically for myself, like I'm completely okay with all of that stuff now and have grown from understanding it, even if I don't agree with it, right? Like, even if I don't agree how it was handled, like I wouldn't have handled it that way. I understand, like in the moment and in the times and all that, like they did the best they could.
Right.
Right,
I mean,
so-
I think that's a big way of you to process it. Yeah.
Right. And those things were better for me at the time. And I think going through that experience at the age that I did forced me into a different path, which is kind of where some of this leads to, right? Where I think some of my understanding, not just of what masculinity would be, doesn't just come from my upbringing with, family members and, very military type people and very type A type people. And, we're middle American, hardworking, machinists and things like that. But it's also coming from, I got a full-time job in a kitchen at 14. And you're in that environment. And anybody that's ever worked in that environment understands the stress, the fast pace, the,
I shared with you. That's why I stopped
yeah,
pursuing my culinary idea. I went to college and I very set on wanting to become a chef, and then I happened to encounter one of those master pastry chefs, and I said I will fucking never do this. I would never work for one of those people. So just saying that story to go with what you're saying, that I literally full stop after 2 years because I was like, I'm never going to work for one of those people. So I'm very aware of how bad some of these entitled chefs can be in treating people, right?
for sure.
Yeah. So
And,
continue your story. Yeah, sorry.
And for me, it wasn't even like these weren't necessarily the most talented people, right? These are owner operators. This is a mom and pop, mother, father, and son operation.
When you were 14.
When I was
Yeah,
14. But mind you, this is all part of the story, right? Like, I am in high school working 5 to 6 days a week, depending on, because they're treating it like if there's Easter Sunday and I was off Sunday, Monday, whatever day, I'm working on Sunday. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's what it is.
It's a business.
It's a business. And they didn't give
Why'd you get a job that young?
because I felt like I needed to, right? Like my
Not
parents
your
had
dad
separated.
Or mom. Nobody's like, hey, you should.
No, it wasn't even out of necessity, right? It was out of like a want. And that was for me probably part of the escape, right? Because I needed to be the adult because my mom, like essentially my mom dipped. At that time in my head, she dipped. She's
Right.
gone.
That
She's
was
out
your
of the
experience
equation.
of it,
Right.
Yeah. Mhm.
And my father is gambling, let's conservatively say 5 days a week. And not gambling like you would think in Vegas, like we're going playing slots or that. It's like, this is Wisconsin.
So like horse racing, stuff like that. Like bets?
Church bingo.
What?
Church bingo 4 to 5 nights a week.
That was not on my bingo card as your response.
Right. Crazy, right? But
No.
brother, 4 or 5 nights a week playing church bingo. Sometimes
How's that even legal?
it's, religion.
Like you win?
Yeah. Religion's real, brother. Like they have to
Religion's
generate,
real.
they have to generate revenue. You know what I'm saying? Like
No,
it's a
I would say,
business.
like they win, like you would win at bingo?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there's
And
like
it's
a
all
buy-in
like,
and there's a pot.
yeah. And this is old school stuff like the plastic chips with the little metal bands and
Yeah,
you just
yeah.
magnet over the top.
Yeah.
They're cardboard cards. You just put your little chips on and magnet them up and slide them back into the bag and they come and check your bingo. It's just like in Wisconsin during the winter or during the summer, they have to capitalize on that too. They do church festivals. So they get decent bands and things like that.
Yeah.
But it's like they have spot games and raffles and they're generating revenue off all that stuff. It's all gambling.
Dude, I had no concept of that. That's good that you told me.
It's crazy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because like when I got here, it's like no one does it. And I'm like, why? Is
Where's the religious bingo?
yeah,
Where's the Jesus bingo at? I want that.
But also, where is the it doesn't matter. St. Joseph's Catholic Church festival on July 12th through the 15th, and there's a beer cart, and it's $5 beers, and that beer costs 10 cents or whatever it would be,
Right.
and then it's like literally the spot game is just cupcake tins that are painted, and you put money on different colors, and they have different odds based on whatever statistics are in that little pin.
How is this not gambling?
It is gambling, but then they have a little screen that they flip over the cash that are on the colors. You throw the ball, it bounces around, it lands on black, and black is 10 to 1. You're on black, you got, you bet 10, you get $100.
So your dad's gambling for the good Lord Jesus, at least.
Yes. So he's essentially out of the picture 4 to 5 nights a week. And I'm trying to, in my head, keep my household organized, right? Like
But you mean your household? It's not your household. You're 14.
Sure, but there's no parent.
I get
no one
that.
is parenting me.
I get that. So then are you then saying to yourself, I'm the parent?
Yes.
Okay, well then.
So
show
now
that.
we're in a duplex. We own the duplex. There's a renter upstairs. Like I'm even to that point, like when I'm home, I'm disciplining my brother, beating the shit out of him. The neighbor upstairs is freaking out. You know what I mean? Like, hi, you need to stop, beating on your brother kind of thing. I would never go to school on a Monday.
Did you do it again? There's so much to unpack here. Are you doing it as I am trying to bring discipline to a house that doesn't have it, or it is, but the echoes of your past coming through and your anger, and that's how you're managing it?
Probably all of the above.
Okay.
Right? Like, because we were both heavily disciplined as children. Like, again, I always tell people like my childhood, amazing. Great. Loved it.
Childhood means circa what year?
Before,
Like, how old?
Before teenage years, right? Like, and
Okay.
for me, before 12, right?
Okay.
Anything
Okay.
before 12. Lots of vacations to Florida, Disneyland, Universal Studios, Northern Wisconsin Dells. Like we were very well-off middle-class family. Like we afforded ourselves a lot of those luxuries where we could connect as a family, right? Always traveling as groups, always bringing different friend groups with, whether it would be, we'd basically rent out an entire resort in Northern Wisconsin for a week or two a year with a couple different family friends. And we'd all be up there and it's, we're drinking, we're fishing, we're skiing.
At 14?
This is yes. In Wisconsin, there's no age. So you can go to the bar with your parents and be, 10 years old at the bar drinking with your parents. It's a true story.
I believe you.
It's culture though. That's the culture of that area, right? It's
Okay.
just, it's not unrealistic, right? Like I can probably honestly say 10 years, at least 10 years old, like on New Year's Eve, we're drinking like Bartles and James, having pina coladas with our parents, right? Like things like that. Like that's real, right? Like that was
Good
just
Lord.
what we did. So I think, my childhood was amazing, right? Like that's what I always tell everyone. But then when I was into that adolescent teenage era, like it got really hard. And it got really hard on purpose because maybe I made it that way because I overloaded myself. And that was probably me coping, where it's like, I always thought I never went to school Monday because Monday I felt like I had to clean the house. So I wouldn't go to school on Monday.
And this is all stuff that you made up.
Yeah.
Like you're telling yourself.
Correct.
Monday is house clean day.
Yes. Clean the house on Monday. And then I'd go to school Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And then Friday in my head, I'm like, I don't need to go. They're not giving me shit for the weekend. And I take Friday off. Same thing. Get things organized, possibly cook some food, and then go to work. And that's the way I did it for years.
Where's school in this?
It wasn't a priority. And
So you didn't go to school?
I did. I went to school during the week, but I'm one of those guys that's like, I had no value in what it was. I overloaded myself at school. Like I didn't take study halls. I didn't have anything, right? If I could have graduated in Wisconsin, you can't graduate early. If I could have graduated early, I would have graduated midway through junior year because I would have taken all of those required classes and not electives. I had all my electives done junior year, midway through, done completely. My senior year was just a fluff. Like I had to take it because there were required classes that I couldn't take beforehand, but I had no other electives.
So you had a short day too.
Correct.
When you were senior, you're probably out pretty early.
Yes, but for different podcasts, but I had to manipulate the system on that. So it was, again, this is me just bringing all this together. I was split option in the Army.
So how old are you now? Because we were at 14. You're talking about this. Where are you at now as a senior? 18 or 17?
17.
Okay.
About to turn 18. But between junior and senior year, I enlisted in the Army. I enlisted in the Army at 17.
Junior to senior year?
Yeah.
Okay. So you did graduate as an 18-year-old.
So I went through basic training though at 17, right? So now I'm dealing with whatever emotional damage I have from my parents getting divorced and me thinking I have to raise my brother.
I don't think you're dealing with it. I think it's a great fuel. I'm assuming you're burning real good in the Army to get through basic.
Yeah, but that was a different experience for me too, right? Like I wasn't mature enough to handle that. Like I can honestly tell you,
mature enough to handle what? Just basic training, or
yeah, like
what do you mean by that?
the emotional and mental stress that you go through. I can tell you for a fact, honest to God, never cried once. Never occurred to me to be upset. Right? It just whatever narcissistic tendencies I had at that point, like it didn't occur to me. My focus was, okay, like however many hundreds or millions of people before me that have done this, I'm going to make it through. And I always tell people now going through management training, I was brainwashed by the United States military at 17. There is nothing you're going to do to get me to undo that, right? Like if I'm in a management training class and they're like, oh, well, there's 10 of you, you're on a boat, it's sinking, and Steven's, the only one that's, there's only one person in the lifeboat, and you got to tell Steven your dying wishes, and I'm the last person to go, and all 9 people in front of me are hysterical, and I'm just like, tell my kids I love them, you know what I mean, and tell my wife, she's amazing. And then they pull me aside afterwards and like, I really don't think you're participating at the level I want you to participate. It's like, there's no boat. There's no boat. There's no boat sinking. I don't get it because I was so emotionally drained. And I think, again, brainwashed is what I always tell people at 17.
Not drained. You were emotionally stunted.
Sure. You can use that. That works. I think
it's a little more accurate.
Yeah. I there was a lot more put on me at a very young age that I wasn't ready for.
No,
right?
I agree.
And I had to figure that out. And Army basic training is one of those things. And it was hard. You know what I mean? And then you get home and now you're in senior year. So now we're working through that.
Wait, you went to basic training during summer?
Yeah.
I didn't know. You just went for a little bit and then you came back to the real world.
It's called split option. So you go between your junior and senior year, and then after your senior year, you go to job training. So it's my senior year. And now I think, I'm untouchable.
Of course.
I'm 17. I already graduated from the Army, basic training. You know what I mean? Like I'm back in school. Like it's Veterans Day. I got my class A's on, like, you know, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And
Straight to your head.
100%. But also that's where the manipulation starts
For who?
for me,
To who?
to the school.
Okay.
Right. So
Only to the school?
yeah, because it was more to my benefit. So I was the kid that could just go read the book, take the test and pass, right? Like I can take a math test and like the only class I ever failed was chemistry. It just didn't resonate with me. But I was in honors level science classes, AP science classes, and math classes always, right?
Mhm.
And I go through, I'm into my senior year and I'm like, this is such a waste of, like, just a waste of time. So I go to the guidance counselor. I'm like, hey, I want to work half days. Like, usually we have those programs and you sign up for them, whatever. I'm like, listen, my dad's sick. He's at home. We really need the money. Like it's our family's machine shop. It's really easy. I'll do all my normal classes. I don't have to have any electives in the afternoon because I'm covered I have more than I need. And I would like to work half days and I'd like to go work in my family's machine shop. And
To school.
to school.
Yeah, got it.
So going through my guidance counselor, giving him this guilt trip. It took me, I don't know, like a week, 2 or 3 meetings. Finally, he agrees to it. And now I got half days. So my senior year in high school, I'm working a full-time job in a kitchen of a supper club. I'm working half days at my family's machine shop and typically most Saturdays. So I'm working 2 jobs, not full-time, but I was probably hitting, I don't know, 30 hours if I worked on Saturdays in a week. Because I get 3 to 4 hours a day
In the machine shop.
in the machine shop.
And then you were going to cook for the restaurant?
Yeah.
From what time to what time?
3:30, 4 o'clock until, 10, 11 o'clock at night, whatever time the restaurant closed. And then one weekend a month, I was in the reserves and I was going to drill and doing the Army thing.
Okay.
So that was me manipulating my way out of the system. And I still don't know how I graduated. Still no clue. I missed probably 65 days my senior year because I still wasn't going to school on Mondays and Fridays.
Right.
Just refused.
Okay. But you graduate.
Graduate.
Got it. And now you have a life that you enter and that you create.
Yes.
Okay. So how is all of this stuff that we just heard keep piling up?
I
What's
think
the
that
next
was,
thing?
again, I think you're formulating who you are at that time.
Right.
I think you're very malleable, right? And
For sure.
as a child in Wisconsin, you're getting the malleability of very hardworking class men, still middle class. So like my parents both worked, right? So you're not seeing like a stay-at-home mom kind of a situation. Most of my friends didn't have stay-at-home moms. But you're seeing
Like
those,
a latchkey kid, you're saying.
right? So
Yeah.
you have those 2 people that are working, right? So it wasn't like you didn't not see that. It wasn't like this is their clear delineation and this is their clear delineation from like a male female perspective. But you're seeing this hardworking person. It's very football and sports and hunting and fishing and whatever other nonsense, right? And even at that time, that shit wasn't for me, but you're being influenced by it. But in my head, all I saw was work. So now I put all of that effort into work, right? Because I never saw the value in school. So now you're in a kitchen. So again, in this
The mom and pop kitchen, not like a
correct.
professional.
Yeah. But now you're in there and you've seen the environment, but you've never worked in a full-on kitchen environment before. But just you can imagine I'm in a kitchen with 2 or 3 40-year-old men. And the second kitchen I went into in high school, it was 2 or 3 of the kids my age, right? One was older, while one was younger, and then there was me.
Yeah.
But we were all in orchestra together. We were all friends. And we all convinced each other to work at this restaurant. So it's a kitchen. It's grab-assing. It's all that kind of stuff where you're shit talking and, I don't know how vulgar you want to get in this, but it's like, oh, don't be a bitch because you burned yourself. Oh, don't be a fucking baby because you sliced off the top of your thumb. But it's like, wrap it up, put a glove on, and roll through. And literally, the whole side of my finger is gone. It's just different, right? It's just that's what it was. And it was like, you don't get an option to leave. It's not where it's like, oh, we'll send you to quick care or something. And you have to fill out this form and you do have a C1 for this. And then, whatever. And I'm like, none of that existed in the 90s. Like, it was just like, this is a kitchen, wrap it up, go back to work.
Do you feel like, because now we're really touching on that subject, do you feel like that how do I want to say this? The question is, do you believe that in the absence of a father figure that you sought to your peers and people around you and you were taking that in as like, that's the way you're supposed to be? Got it. You're supposed to be a tough guy. Look, that guy's a tough guy. I got to be a tough guy.
Yes. But I think part of the malleability came from you are looking at this as these people, right? Because it's something I do want to talk about and touch on is boys raising boys, not men raising boys. I didn't have a father at that point. Childhood, great. Adolescence, still very, very influential, right? And I didn't have that authoritative person, right?
Remember, the thought was also, great, I'm going to send you to the military because they're going to make you a man.
No. That was me. That was me escaping the situation that I was in because I didn't like the people I was with.
No, I get that, but that's a lot of people's story of why they sometimes enter into
that is my
military.
Story. Yeah, for a different time, different conversation, but that's why I left.
But I'm also stating that at that time, still, even before that, a lot of parents thought, you now get to be a man. We're going to send you off to the military, and like the military will handle that.
Yes.
You'll come back a man from them.
Agree.
So I'm just kind of planting that seed that you already are doing that, but then you're also in these environments where you're working and experiencing other men, right? Yep. Air quotes men, just people that you're looking up to in whatever way, and you're influenced by that.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. And that is actually kind of where it led me into being the leader, right? And that's where I think, for me, the masculinity came from the leadership side, right? Like I always sought those people because they were leaders, right? Like if you're in a kitchen, like, and this is probably with any profession, but specifically in a kitchen, I was just good. It was just natural. Like I didn't struggle with it ever. Even as a child, it's brand new to me. I did dumb things. I fell down a flight of stairs with 5 gallons of soup and spilled it all over myself. And I'm talking like a full ass flight, 20 stairs. Mm-hmm. Second or third stair, and I slid all the way down to the bottom. This building's probably 50 years old at this point, and it's in the 90s, and the stairs have never been replaced, right? There's not like there's tread on it or anything like that. Right. Just old wood, and I fell all the way down. The owner pokes his head around the corner. You okay? And I just look up the stairs, and I'm like, yeah, okay, get it cleaned up. Steven, I'll never forget that. I am covered in boiling hot soup.
Just gave him a thumbs up like the Fall Guy, like
dead ass, like
thumbs up. We're good.
Yeah, I'm okay. But like literally, I don't know how I didn't get burned, but I'm covered in the soup, in clam chowder. Yeah. It was so crazy to me to even think about, right? Like even just talking about it.
Why?
Because it's such an awful environment. Right? Like no one gave a shit.
In retrospect.
But
at that moment, remember, because you got to keep me in the like that guy's perspective. You're back to, yeah, I'm a tough guy. We're good.
Well, yeah, 100%. Right. Like you have to own it. You know what I mean? Because at that point, again, no one gave a shit. You know what I mean? It's see it work tomorrow, right?
Yeah.
But in that vein, like that leadership is where I was kind of leaning towards, right? Like, immediately when there's a weak person.
But what do you mean leadership? Because you have to quantify that for me.
Because in a kitchen, it's all about it. So my kitchen experience has always been with people that lead, right? Like you're working in tandem. So like your success is built on the success of the person next to you.
Okay.
Classical kitchen brigade system is based off of the military, right?
Yep.
Like you have these dial downs. And the military is to lead to follow, right? So there's a dial down. It doesn't matter what your rank is. As soon as you're out of basic training, you're responsible for another human at some point, at some level. So if you're in this servant leadership, right, you have to follow at the same time you're leading. That's the way I've always treated the kitchen, but there's always that weak person. So I never aligned myself with that person. I'd find the most dominant, badass, talented person in the kitchen. I'm going to go work with him. Right. And I'm going to go shadow that person right? And I'm going to learn from him because he's making the best fish, or he's making the best chicken, or he cuts the best prime rib, right? Like whatever it would be. I'm going to go, align myself with that person. And well, that lady makes the best soup. I'm going to go make soup with her today. It's just something that I learned younger, where it's like I just attached myself to the people that were doing the best thing and learned from them and then moved on to the next thing. And getting out of the military at that younger age, that is where like I understood probably too much following was occurring for me. And I wanted to be a stronger leader. And I kind of owned that role. And in a kitchen environment, you just have to be that alpha male dickhead in order to survive.
To qualify your statement, you thought you had to because those are the environments that you only experienced.
Correct.
So for you, you were like, Chief, I got it. This is what you do. And that guy's a dick. Wait till you get a taste of me.
Right.
Got it. Okay.
That was the evolution, right?
Yeah.
Once I removed myself from being in Wisconsin and coming to Vegas, slightly different experience, different organization. Still in kitchens, right? But now we're in union environments and people are treated differently and act differently, still with very toxic chefs and very toxic humans. But understanding that there is a different way to manage these people and get them to work for you. And I was a manager at a very young age. I was the garde manger chef for a $42 million banquet operation at 22 or 21, whatever it was. And that was a lot of stress, a lot of everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And I'm telling 45 and 50-year-olds what to do. And at that point in time, I just thought I was untouchable. And I thought I was this badass and I can just run it the way I knew to run it. And very quickly you learn that your success is built off of the team and not off of the individual. Right. It's not what I can do. It's what we can do.
Right.
And that was when it kind of was my defining time as a manager, was understanding how to treat people differently and become a better leader and not being that toxic person, right? Because I don't think it has anything to do with masculinity. I think it has to do with human beings. I think it has to do with people. There are toxic people. And
So
I didn't want to be
the toxic behavior that you at the 23-year-old had now seen the difference between this is where I came from. This was the norm. I'm over here. I now have a difference in perspective.
So
I look back. What was the toxicity that you noticed?
this will be an interesting story for you because I think it'll kind of dial into probably 90% of the conversations that you and I have ever had about communication.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that the majority of the people nowadays want some sort of a pacifist person, right? So that's the person that I became. Still aggressive, but I don't want to have that direct confrontation because I'm a confrontationalist, right? And I want to have the argument.
Okay.
So I'm 4 or 5 months into my journey as a sous chef, and we're in the middle of this banquet, and we have these carts with food on it. So we have the same carts left and right. This has got food that's going out to the banquet. This cart over here has a breakdown station where the dirty food goes, bowls that are half empty or bowls that have been cleared, and they just go on that cart. So I come out and I address the staff. I'm like, hi, this is for food. This is for the dishes. We have to keep them separate. So the servers blow me off because they're like, who is this kid? And they just continue to do what they're doing. So what's my response? I go and grab all the bowls from the buffet that they were putting on my trays because they're mine.
Right. Of course.
So I take all the bowls from my stuff and put all their stuff in their breakdown. So they had Lexons of ice with milk in it and stuff. So I just started throwing dirty bowls of food in all of their stuff that they were using. So an older lady comes out. And I don't know anybody from anybody at this point. She starts screaming. So I walk up and I'm like, hi. I put that there because I've told you and all of the servers to not put it here. And you continue to put it there. So I put it here. Then she starts screaming at me, so I scream back. We get into this thing, and she walks off. Later that afternoon, I'm in the employee relations department because she is the shop steward and did not like the way I approached her, right? And I'm like, yeah, but it's wrong. the way she did it was wrong. The way it was wrong. Like, because for me, it's just black and white. And they're like, yeah, but you can't speak to her that way. I said, I spoke to her appropriately. She yelled at me and I responded in kind, right? Like, and I was just trying to make sense of it. But that was me being a pacifist, right? That was instead of communicating and just being a better communicator and just saying, hi, please don't put this stuff here a second or third or fourth time even. I said it once. It shouldn't have to say it twice. I grabbed the stuff and I threw it in a box and I walked away. And right, wrong, or indifferent, that's what I did. And now I probably wouldn't do it that way. I would give you more.
But at the time, because remember, there's a divide here. There is the you leading up to who you became, and now the conversation of the introspection that we're going to have back.
Right.
So you're that guy. You're like, yeah, don't do it. And I told you don't do it. I know you're telling me I shouldn't have done that, but I'm telling you that I'm right.
Right.
Okay.
And
great guy.
Well, yeah, it's different times, different people. And after that, it was just, I had not a come to Jesus moment with myself. I had a come to Jesus moment with a few of my older cooks. And I'm just like, guys, like, what can we do here to make this better? And they're like, listen, this is what we need from you. Got it. That was so impactful to me. What we need from you has nothing to do with what I need from them. Whether they cared or not is irrelevant to this conversation, because I still wouldn't know if I really needed, right? They didn't care. This is what we need from you. Done. Ever since that day when I was in that organization, I never failed again. Ever. Those guys had my back the entire time, because that was our communication. What do you guys need? That's it. Just ask the question. What do you guys need? I need this. I need this. Done. Hey guys, we're not going to have this. What can we do? Right? You start speaking inclusively. It's not about what I can do. I can't do anything for 5,000 people. What do we have to do for 5,000 people? And it was just different, right? It completely changed who I was, how I spoke, and how I organized myself. Because when you're working in normal kitchens, it's always an individuality, right? Even in the Army, right? Like you're making food for large quantities, and
sure, but there is also a distinction to be had. And what is that? There is the person that I am at work and the communication skills I use at work, but those don't directly translate or are the same when you exit work, because now there's an interpersonal thing that you need to do. So the communication styles have to still be a little bit different. How? I don't have to like you. I get to work with you.
Right.
Once we go past that doorway, don't fucking talk to me. I don't like you as a person, and I don't have to talk to you.
Right.
Right. So there's like the different communication styles that you have to, and obviously because it's business. But for you, how did those impact the way that you communicated to people personally? That wasn't a direct correlation, I'm assuming.
No, it wasn't. And at that point, I don't think that evolution came for another 10 years, right? Because even at that point, work was everything. Like I'm working 7 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day. It was nonstop. It never stopped. It's a kitchen. It's Las Vegas. We're always busy. Like we're running all the time. Yep. We have no time to walk, and work was work and work was everything. And I think that that's part of why, even in those moments when you do have those interpersonal times when you're going to go hang out with friends, or you're going to go have drinks or a birthday party or whatever it is, like you don't have the time to even turn that person off. Right. So it doesn't matter how I felt inside or how I projected myself. I still projected myself as that chef.
Yep.
Right. And what you probably see on TV as a Gordon Ramsay chef, right? Like as that person, chef. Right. As that. Right. And I've never, not that I've never wanted to be that person, but I've never viewed myself as that person, because I'm never the person to just bark orders. I've always been the person to work. Sure. But that in my head at the time was where I always made the excuse. I always gave the excuse of, at least I'm here, right? I won't ever be the people that taught me. I'm not going to burn you. My mentor burned me.
Okay. So I love this, because we're getting there. We're getting so close.
Oh yeah, no, it's just, this is the big lead up.
Oh,
right?
I love it. No, this did perfect. So here you are, you realize that there is a way for you to be effective at your job, and you're willing to make that concession and change. but none of this translates into you as an individual, right? Because I believe one of the comments I gave you when we were first hang out, I said, man, you have a great tool. That tool is sharp. That tool is dialed in, and there's no way I can tell you how to make that tool better. I said, but you have one tool,
Right.
and that is it.
Correct.
So for everybody listening can understand, you need more tools. That's how I put it to you, right?
Yes.
You
It was
need
always,
more tools
and
in the toolbox.
listen, I've used the toolbox reference to so many people now.
Yeah.
And it was like, I was reading, I forget what the book is. Hang on. Because I sent it to you and I wanted you to look at it. Because I think it's relevant, because there's a passage in it that I thought was really relevant to what we were discussing at the time, is the courage to be disliked. And in that book,
great book.
so in that book, there is at least I think it's that book. There's a passage in there, because it's like being narrated from an outside perspective.
As a conversation. Two
Right.
people having a conversation.
Yeah. So he was telling the story of the kid, and the kid was like, well, I respond with violence because that's just what I know, right? It's easy for me. The guy's like, great. What happens when it's not just a conversation? What happens when you go and stab someone and you kill them? Then what? Can you explain it away as it was the emotion of the moment? Well, now you killed someone. And the kid didn't understand, right? And then the next, the next explanation was, your mother is disciplining you and she's screaming at you, she's yelling at you, and the phone rings and it's the school. She picks up the phone. Hey, how's it going? Or I'm sorry, she picks up the phone and she's still screaming at the phone, and it's the school. And she's like, oh, hi. Yes, this is Miss So-and-so. I'm really sorry. Yep, absolutely. And she's polite and, whatever. And then the minute she hangs up the phone, she's screaming at you and yelling at you again. How is it that human can turn that on and off in that moment and not have the ability to just keep it off? Right? So you and I having those conversations of the toolbox, obviously the toolbox resonates with me, right? The idea of these tools. That conversation was the polish on our conversation of the toolbox, because I'm like, it is a light switch. And I have never explained it to people that way, but I've always explained it to people this way. This is an act. To your point, this is who I am at work, right? Who I am here is not who I am at home. It's not who I am with you or her or him or them. And this is how I operate here, because there is a leadership perspective that has to be had in this environment to maintain the control. I've always felt that way, but me personally, I've always been defined by whom that person is, because that's the only thing people see. Because I don't have friends that I hang out with. I don't go and have those interpersonal relationships with, or interpersonal conversations with people to explain things or have you understand, right? You and I've had this conversation. Yeah. You're really good at being objective, but also giving the positivity, right? You're like, you're good enough, right? And that's really hard for people like me to hear, accept, and understand, right? And you do it all the time. We're in the middle of a conversation and I'm on one. And you're like, I need you to stop for a second. You're okay. You're good enough. I need you to be okay with that, right? Like you do that all the time, right? And I probably still don't have a great enough appreciation for that, right? Because I'm still really, really hard on myself and I still bring myself down. But that grows on you, right? Like it does, right? And now that becomes a tool for me, right? And I don't assimilate who you are. I assimilate some of the things that you communicate, right? And I've made them my own. And sometimes I will stop someone, right? And it's not even in the moment. I'll get a text message from someone. Hey, it really sucks right now. Hey, I'm really upset that you're not here. This was how many days ago? 5 days ago, 4 days ago? New Year's Eve. This is
yeah.
So this is the first New Year's Eve I'm away from my team of people. So a couple people text me. They're like, this is really fucking hard. And it sucks, right? And you're super emotional about that. So we were together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm texting these people and I'm like, listen, you are better than me. You got it. That was it. Like crying emojis, super emotional conversation after that, right? Like, but
With you and them, you're saying?
yeah, but I had to give that to them, right? I probably never would have done that if we haven't had the connection that we've had, if we haven't walked through that conversation on how to better approach that, because they're making it about me, right? Because I'm not there. It's nothing to do with me.
Right.
Nothing. It has 100% to do with them. This is your moment. This is your time. You can't rely on what I would have contributed, right? But you also can't give me any credit either.
Right.
You get to take full credit now.
No, that's great that you're sharing that. Like, that's awesome what you did for your team, because they deserve to hear that.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's great that they get to do that, right? It's great that they're evolving too. Because some of those people have worked for me for 10, 12, 14 years. And none. I'm not with any of them, right? They haven't come with me, and I've been separated from them for a year now. So it's a long time, right? To have been with them almost constantly,
Right.
for 10 to 14 years, right? Like some of them were 10, some of them have been longer. So it's hard, right? Like that was a really kind of a gut check, and
I could see it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So having those long-term connections has always been what I have leaned on, right? So if I walk into a room and someone says, you're toxic,
Yeah.
whatever it is, however they word that, it's not just openly saying you're a toxic person, but you bring negativity or whatever it is. Sure. Okay. That's your opinion, because my opinion's not. They said, and I have 20 people that'll run through a wall with me, not for me. They won't run through it with you or for you, but they'll run through it with me, because they know, regardless of what's going on, I'm here, right? And I've always defined myself as the presence, right? My presence and my leadership came from that, where you and I have talked about this, and I know some people are just like, you're stupid, because you've told me I'm stupid for putting the amount of time I put into things, because you're not valuing yourself well enough.
Yes.
And I'm not putting myself first. But you're going to walk into this kitchen where, when I took over the kitchen that I was in previously, it was a 24-hour operation. I'd never run a full-on 24-hour operation like that. Been in room services and things of that nature, but never a freestanding 24-hour restaurant. I'd get there 5, 6 o'clock in the morning. I'd work until 9, 10 o'clock at night. I'd go home, take a nap, come back in 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, make sure everything was okay, go back home, take a nap, go back. I was probably working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. Probably did that for a year straight. Not a single day off. Always in that building. Because what I needed people to see is that I could do the job, right? I was proving it to them, not to myself. And that was really hard. And it was being in those moments where I knew that I would get the respect from the people by them seeing me here. Not necessarily by what I could and I couldn't do, but just that I was willing to be with them. And that was really hard, right? It was really hard for me to do that. And it's a thankless thing, right? And to walk into a room in a manager meeting and have someone that doesn't work with me tell me that I'm an awful negative person, it was just wild to me. And that's where, for me, it was always, that is where I kind of struggled with that idea of toxic masculinity, because you're judging it off of the 5 seconds you walked into my kitchen, saw me getting things under control, and then left. Your snapshot had nothing to do with how I run or how I am as a human being.
And now we're in the thick of it, which is what I wanted you to do. So let's look at that. Let's explore that. Where else do you see this, or where else is this known to have people bond in a very deep way quickly?
In the military?
Correct.
In support
you and
services?
I are in the thick of it. And man, there's nothing that's going to bond me closer to you than you having my back. And it is like, you're my fucking guy from here on out.
Right.
Like, what you just did, fuck yeah. You're my guy. Now, that's not to negate that's not, it is a real moment. It is a real bonding moment. This really happened. But for you, you got to look at it and say, it's the pressure cooker of the moment that allowed me to create this environment where this intensity was the ability for us to bond. The nuance is that that can't be your only tool in the tool shed. You and I have to be in the thick of it to create this bonding moment of where your intensity, your tool that comes out, is the right tool.
Right.
How are you ever going to do that with somebody else when that powder keg is not available? Now, when I remove the intensity, but I leave the guy with the tool, what do you have? An asshole.
Sure. Yeah.
Because why? Your behavior, the tool that you have that's really good at doing one thing, there's no powder keg that it's dependent upon,
right,
for it to be effective.
Sure.
So when you say, I don't understand them, well, you don't understand them because you continuously are what? You're the guy in the shit.
Yeah.
You never exit it. So how does that impact you in all domains of your life? That the only way that you can show up is by it's fucking go time. Everything has to fall apart for me to be successful at what I do. When that tool can't be leveraged, and again, it's a great tool for the situation that we just talked about. But if that situation is not there, you're out of tools.
Right.
And to use that same tool and wield that powerful tool in the same way, you're cutting everybody around you.
Yeah.
Everybody around you is getting cut. And how is that? Emotionally, right? They're feeling this like intensity from you where they're like, dude, I don't get it. Like, I just need to get the dog outside and you're fucking yelling at me about picking up the shit, making sure that the dust is there, blah, blah, blah. Like,
right.
You're here. I kind of need you like at DEFCON 5, bro, not 1. So when we talk about you have gotten feedback before, people have had the impression of you of being like a very, or having the traits, not you specifically, but traits of like being a toxic masculine person. I think you shared the run up to that. My norm has been seeing these traits happen to be men mostly in the kitchen, right? This whole time as you came up, and not just them, air quotes, being men, but them handling the situation. And most of them became what? They were the leaders. They were the ones out front.
Oh,
they were the ones handling shit.
And to your point, it's trauma bonding, right?
Yeah,
like it's all that stuff. And all those references are again accurate, right? And I would always and will always take ownership for the behaviors, the actions, all that stuff. But what people don't see is the recovery, right? Like, because they see that moment. Recovery? If you were to walk into my kitchen in the middle of a shift, it's deathly silent, right? The 5 seconds you walked in when I had to yell at someone, and again, it's not yelling at you, like demoralizing or demeaning you in any way. It's me yelling to get people's attention and get you to focus and organize. That was literally 30 seconds of that interaction, that clip. You walked in the kitchen, walked out of the kitchen, and that was it. But you didn't see the 30 seconds after that where I'm standing next to you and like, hi, we have to do all these things and having a normal conversation. Me getting control. Again, it's any speech, right? You have to get your attention getter. My attention is raising my voice.
Sure.
Right.
So can I share with you a story?
Yeah.
Because I think it's very relevant. Not going to make me look very good, but that's okay because it's the truth. So I shared a relationship before, and I would have to have conversations similar to what you said. I was like, hey, we should probably talk. Hey, we should have a conversation. Hey, I'm open. I'm trying to create the space, blah, blah, blah. That person would be either belligerent or dismissive or all the things. So then my tool for that was like, oh, you're not listening to me, even though what I think I'm saying makes a lot of sense. I have a great idea. I should probably get louder because then you'll listen.
Right.
So I did. Okay. This was my go-to. I'm frustrated. You're not listening. I'm going to yell at you. Not just yell at you, but like yell at you as loud as I can.
Right.
Physically. Because like I could yell at you more if my voice didn't give out. I wish I could. Why? Well, my limit is my voice is giving out. Right. That's why it's my limit.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I'd fucking tear you a new one. Right? I'm a great person because I thought that was okay.
Sure.
But it is okay. You're being a rude person. You're not listening. So it's 100% justifiable to scream at you at the top of my lungs.
Right.
Okay. Because you deserve it. But if I step away from that.
Right.
And I would look at myself as an individual and say, okay, let's put aside whatever they said. That doesn't matter for right now. Let's focus a little bit, right, my guy? Focus. What are you doing? What was I doing?
In the moment?
Yeah. I was screaming at another human being.
Sure.
At the top of my lungs. At whatever decibel I could before my voice gave out. Full stop.
Yep.
Nothing else matters. So if that's what I was doing, there's really no other way I could have done that. Forget the catalyst to that.
Correct. There's a million ways.
None of those matter right now.
There's a million other ways.
But what matters is what? Hey, 2 seconds. Look at yourself independently. What are you doing? And this is the conversation that had happened in my head.
Right.
Unfortunately, not with her, because obviously when you're in the thick of it, you don't want to try to be introspective. You're right. I'm right. I'm upset with you. You deserve this. Right? You deserve it. Fuck you.
Yeah.
But when I stepped away, I was able to kind of look back, right, with kind of like a new lens. I don't no longer feel this pressure trying to make this work. It's done. But now I get to look back and say, I mean, whatever they did is what they did. But who's going to justify the piece of shit that you were? Because that wasn't her problem.
Right.
She didn't create that. You created that. Like somewhere in the depths of me, this thing lives. Right? As calm as you've perceived me, as calm as you've seen me. You saw a little bit on New Year's kind of what happened with the spat with a friend. But for the most part, chill. I don't think you've ever seen me like that. To speak to somebody like that.
No, and
why?
Maybe better control?
No, it's not control.
Maybe better choices?
There you go. And why? Because I had to look at myself objectively at that time. I had to honestly, because I couldn't look at that situation for how it should have been. Mm-hmm. If I included their noise. I'll leave it to that. Why? Because every turn I took, well, fuck, did you see that? Yeah, I'm right. And of course this happened because I'm right.
Yes. I'm really glad you're bringing this up.
Yeah.
Because that is you allowing your past to dictate your present.
Yes.
And how that fucking sucks.
How so?
Because whatever the trigger was has occurred previously in a different life. With a different person.
But it wasn't a trigger, my man. This is what I'm sharing. No matter what the trigger was, the trigger's there.
Right.
It's triggering me. Does that make sense?
Yes.
It's that if I remove the trigger, if I remove the situation, I'm still left with a human being, this guy. I am not controlled by you or anyone. I hope not. Because if I am, I get to be a victim and say,
Right.
God, I wish I was a better person if Matt didn't control me.
Right.
But that's not true.
Yeah, because then you can blame somebody else.
Yeah, of course. But if I remove that and I start standing in that, it's kind of ugly, man. I'm not speaking for you. I'm speaking for myself. It was ugly for me. And what was ugly about it is that I, as a human being that I strive to be, I missed the mark by a long shot. Why? Because I was really upset. I was really frustrated. I felt like I was right. I felt like she deserved it. Who deserves that?
Nobody.
But I did it. So then I have to step back and say, shit, man, I don't got nobody to blame but me. Because even though this person did 1, 2, and 3, I still had a choice in this. I did not have to react like that.
My term is matching energy.
Well,
right.
I didn't have to. Fair.
Don't match energies.
But
right?
what I'm getting at is I'm sharing my story with you because your story sounded very similar. If you could have only seen how great I was to this person all the other time,
right,
you wouldn't give me shit about absolutely screaming at the top of my lung at this person. She deserved it. What's the difference?
Yeah, listen, this is you living in your shit right now, though. Because I can tell you from an outside perspective, it didn't look like that, regardless of the intensity. I don't care. I don't.
On New Year's?
Yeah.
No. Not nowhere near close, my guy.
No. Yes.
No. But what I'm sharing is in my past, I did do that. And I have to take ownership for that. And the reason I'm sharing that is because it never matters that I was in the 2 minutes of intensity that this person required of me to do what they needed to do. It's, you don't see that was the tool that you just used. You've used it. It's worked. It continues to work, I'm assuming. If it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of situation. It works. The only reason why you would decide to change that, it's not because the tool's broken or inefficient. It works. I told you this. I was like, dude, can't tell you how to be a better chef. Cannot. Right. Or to again, the way I put it, I don't know how to tell you how to make that tool any better. You did it. Like, you reached the epitome of it. The problem is that tool is very ineffective, except for that very thin strip of where, Matt, you're on. I need the tool. Come on. I need Matt. And you're like, gotcha, chief. Where you need me.
Right.
Where do I point it?
100%.
You're 100% great with that. Challenge is, what about all the other times that are not in this narrow band where that's the tool to use? And for me, that was that situation where I had to look at myself and say, regardless of what that person brought to the table, I don't want to be that person. And I can't have that be the influence of when I'm like, it's okay, let that beast out.
Yeah. And for me, like, it's, I don't know, call it 5 years. It doesn't matter. It could be 6. But conservatively to say 5, that monster has never been the monster anymore, right? Because it hasn't needed to be, right? And I have made evolutions, and one of those people that I kind of leaned on turned me on to, this is something when you and I first met, we talked about stoicism, right?
Yeah. You talked to me about it, to be fair. Yeah.
Correct. And I own that. I own the hell out of that, right? Like, I love everything about it, right? Because for me, it resonates with me deeper than most things because it helps me explain me, right? Where I do kind of have that lack of emotional response because I don't need it. It's like, I never believed that it was out of my control. I always thought it was personal.
Say that again?
I always thought that every attack, every negative thing, like, my car got hit, it's like, that was personal, right? Like, or,
like everything happened, you took personally.
Correct.
Oh, got it.
It was always that way, right? And that's where the emotional response came from, like the anger or the frustration or all those things came from that. And when you kind of go through that stoicism experience, you understand that it's 100% out of your control.
But I honestly had known nothing about Stoicism before you brought it up.
Right. And when you own those principles and you own that, right, and you understand it, it just kind of influences you differently, right? It gives you a different perspective, and it helped to calm me, right, and give me the clarity that I needed in the moment, so I can be like, I'm still really fucking angry.
Sure.
We have to do better next time, right? Previously, if the shit boiled over, I probably wouldn't have approached it like that. I would have barked and tried to bite. Where now, I still communicate verbally, and I swear a lot. And that offends people. And that is how I keep my communication effective, regardless of how crude it may seem to the majority of the population. I choose to still utilize that form of direct communication because to me, it's still so offensive to people. It still gets them to focus, right?
Sure.
If I throw a fucking randomly, just get your fucking head out of your ass.
A little spice, a little seasoning on that.
Your ears perk up and you're like, okay. And I could be just having the calmest conversation, right? Now I've got your focus because...
Sure, but this is also a choice by you.
Correct.
There's still, and this is kind of, we're coming full circle. There still has to be a choice of who you are. I am this person.
Right.
Love me, hate me. I hear you. You disagree. Thanks. But I have to choose to be something in that choice I made. It's this.
Right.
I guess you and I are just never going to see eye to eye. Now, in that term, right, which is what you wanted to come onto the podcast and talk about, was the idea of what is toxic masculinity? What is being a masculine person? What you're saying is like, what is it to be a man? Fair?
Yeah, 100%.
So if we look at those things, and why we wanted to have this conversation is to say, I don't think it's hard to create a divide or to understand there's certain things that guys do for the sake of like, they just feel it's a part of them. And it could lean to just because it's part of my masculinity. Some people do that with hunting and they say, it brings me, it's a little primal. I think it really resonates with me. It's just a manly thing to do. I like it. I enjoy it. Right. Then you might have somebody else look at that and say, that's very toxic. Well, like, what's toxic about it? Like, how am I hurting anybody else? Well, you're hurting the animal. Fair. It's a spiritual thing for me. I understand the sacrifice that the animal makes for me. That, again, I don't speak for everybody. I'm just saying, like, I'm going with this situation. And I have my own bonding experience with that animal as I take its life. And I recognize the sacrifice it gives me. And I appreciate the sacrifice it created for my family, for myself, or whatever. And it becomes a very, think of it almost like a cathartic moment of me recognizing that I am that animal soon enough. It will come for me, right? So like, here's this very deep moment that you could share with somebody. But if you just wrote it off as toxic masculinity, there's no depth to that. You never would understand that story.
The reason I wanted to bring this up with you is because I thought we would get really deep into what I think people just fail to touch on. And
but we have. I don't think you see that.
No, we have.
Yeah.
But for me,
Sure.
It is, did you do any lead up to this conversation? Truly.
With who?
With yourself. Like, did you try to be thoughtful, try to think about things? Like I made notes, right? Like I have things that
no, not notes. It was more to consider my perspective on the subject matter.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I did the same thing. But what I did was I had conversations with people because I wanted to be in this moment with you because we're big on moments.
Yeah.
And I wanted to be in this with you. And if this lasted 5 hours, it lasted 5 hours, right? But what I wanted it to be was if we sat here, I was ready for the conversation because I wanted to know what everyone else thought about it from a definitive person, right? Like you are Stephen, I'm Matthew. I define it this way.
Sure. So you define toxic masculinity.
You define toxic
Sure,
masculinity.
I will. So for me, when I think about it and I thought about the subject matter, I said, you know what do I really consider to be a toxic trait that would be more associated to a masculine person? Bullying, toxic masculinity, this idea that I have to overpower you or to demean you for me to feel better or bigger, right? That doesn't mean that women don't do this.
Yeah, we can have the toxic femininity conversation later.
So what I'm getting at is like, so from the idea is it's all just toxic behavior is what I'm boiling it down to.
Yes.
It's who portrays it more or more relevant to, I think is irrelevant.
This is what actually was what was hopeful of from me. I was very hopeful for
Are
this
you
part of it.
leading me right now, sir, to have an answer?
No, and I'm actually really glad I'm not leading you.
Good.
Because here's the crazy part. Say I talk to 5 people.
Sure.
How many people could define it?
Everybody.
None. 0.
What do you mean?
0. Nobody can.
Nobody could give you their
Nobody can
perspective on it?
define toxic masculinity. They can't.
Of course not. Why?
Because it doesn't exist.
Correct. But toxicity does.
Because toxicity
Toxic
does.
behaviors do.
Humans, the person, it's toxic. You're a bad person, right?
Yeah.
You and I talk about it because my thing is a character flaw. That's your character flaw. You need to work on that, right? Go and fix that. Come back. That's okay. That's a you thing.
Sure.
I still love you, right? I have all the love in my heart for you, but that's a character flaw. Is there a character flaw that I'm not willing to deal with or cope with or accept?
Or to acknowledge.
Sure, but I will acknowledge it. I just won't accept it. You will not be part of my circle. We're just not going to kick it anymore, right?
Run that by me again.
If you have a character flaw that I don't agree with, right?
Yes.
Like, say you're a murderer. I don't know. Like,
Sure.
that doesn't jive with me. We're just not going to be homies anymore. You have a nice day.
Yeah.
Right? We're no longer going to continue to converse. I just think you're a bad person, right? Some of these things are rooted in misogyny or whatever it is, right? Like,
I'm picking up.
do you get what I'm saying?
Yep.
That for me is truly the defining principle of what a toxic person is. Anybody that has an extreme version of, if you're a misogynist, if you're demoralizing, demeaning to human beings, right? If you want to rip and tear someone down, it's gender neutral. No one cares if you're a male or female.
Correct.
My problem, and this is the reason why I wanted to talk about it today, and I wanted to get you to define it to just see how far left or right of center we were to progress forward, to have this conversation, because
Don't worry, people will put it in the comments
oh
once I upload it.
yeah, for sure.
So you can read that.
No, 100%. But what I think is interesting is when we define our masculinity, I think the masculine trait is important, right? I just do. I think being
But the way you define it, I define it might be different.
no, correct. But
There is no definition of masculine.
Sure.
I'm not going to get into the other side of that thing.
no,
just
yeah, I'm not
going
correct.
there. What I'm getting at is, if you consider yourself to be a masculine person, and I'm going to define that as you are a man, don't tear me apart, comments. And you say, I believe to me, I have a masculine trait because it's what I resonate with. But that's why we also say men can have feminine traits
Yes,
as well.
I think everyone needs to own their lanes.
What I'm getting at is there is no box you fit in,
Yes,
because somebody might go between one to the other or stay right in between them. So when I say who defines masculinity, what came up for me, because you asked me, is whoever imposed that thought to you. Because if you always just said masculinity is whatever you make it, everybody has like, cool. I guess I get to figure that out. Not, I have to live up to the standard that
Right.
maybe I don't resonate with.
correct.
And you have shared some stories with me of something similar to that. But that's where I'm getting at.
but it's the weaponization, right? Like
From who?
from anyone.
But hold on, we
that
got to define
comment,
that.
but
Who's
anyone
weaponizing it? In your
anyone
perspective?
using toxic masculinity as a phrase
that's
is
good.
is weaponizing it.
Yeah.
Because again, in my opinion, in my definition, doesn't exist.
But it does.
Toxic traits exist. They have
There you
nothing to
go.
do with
That's what I'm getting at.
femininity or masculinity or anything.
Toxic masculinity is a term used
As a weapon.
to shit on somebody.
Yes.
And as a weapon, I agree.
Yes. So what I want to, because this is like this is like an octopus. It's like a hydra, right?
Yeah.
Like there's so many other paths that we can take and go down. And I think that, I don't think this has to be two, but I don't know if we're going to touch everything today.
Probably won't,
But in that defining of what it was, when I was like, okay, now you're going through these each individual tentacles of all these problems that are going to exist from this, people will utilize it to emasculate someone, right? And that for me was the problem that I had.
is that why you say you use the term weapon?
Yes.
Okay.
Because for me, and this is coming from the heart, like this is real personal.
Yeah.
The easiest way to take down a male, a just super alpha, you know what I mean, like that guy, is to emasculate them, right? In some way, right? If you attack their manhood,
yeah, I can
right?
see that.
Weaponizing the term toxic masculinity, and that's why I think people use it against me, is they're trying to emasculate me, right? And they think that that's a really easy, that's the layup, right? That's just the low hanging fruit.
Yeah, okay. So let's do a live example. Okay. Because I want to make sure we peel the layers apart on this, at least for each other, because that's why we're doing it. It's for you and I to have a conversation, put it out there, right? Matt, I think you're a bitch. I said it. Great. Let's pull that apart. What did I do? Did I emasculate you?
You tried, because that is
pause, my friend. That's how you perceived it. It's not what I said.
Sure.
Okay.
Yes.
Because then we have to get super literal. What's the definition of a bitch? It's a female dog. Great. What context did you use it? What was your intent?
Yes, but your intent is your intent, and it has nothing to do with the 10 other people listening to the conversation.
I get that, but I'm the one that said it. We're the ones having the conversation.
I hear you.
We're picking it apart so that hopefully somebody else uses this. Okay. You being the more virtuous Matt, not the old Matt, how would you handle that?
If you called me, like if we were in an actual conversation, like, oh, you're being a bitch.
Yeah.
I would respond in kind. I would respond with something similar.
Okay, great. So let's flip the script. You do it now. I'll be the higher version of ourselves.
Why do you think it's necessary to act like a bitch in this moment right now?
Got it. Strange that you would see it that way. Why did you say that?
Because I'm attacking you.
No, you would have the conversation with me of, because you did this, you did this.
You want to have it like...
I was trying to do that.
Yeah, because you're responding. Yeah. Again, I'm doing it, right? Like I'm calling you, like, why are you acting like a bitch right now?
And I said,
well, why
what
would
do you see?
Why would you say that? Because you're acting like a woman.
Okay.
You're
sure.
You're acting like a female right now.
What is it about what I'm doing that you perceive as like being feminine?
Because you're being passive. You're recoiling. You don't have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I expect some sort of confrontation out of this. Like I expected a real answer, and not for you to just sit there and be in your shit.
Yeah, perfect. Well, don't know what to tell you, Matt. This is just who I am. And if you believe that's feminine, sure.
Right. And I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's okay.
So you can continue to be a bitch.
Sure.
And I'm going to continue to be frustrated.
I can't help you with the frustration.
Right.
So.
And that is why I don't ever perceive those types of things, right? Because when we use those terms, I think specifically the two of us, they're playful.
Well, the way I talk on this podcast is very different than you and I speak to each other. And the reason is because we've created that rapport with each other, and it's funny to us.
Oh, no, 100%.
I'm not going to go out to a crowd of men and be like, where the bitches at? I'm just asking for it.
Right.
And this is kind of something that happened on New Year's that I spoke to you about. It's ultimately a man thing. I'm going to say it is a man thing. I'm not going to go up to you and smack you in the face and not expect you to do nothing. If I'm going to you as a man,
yes,
smacking you, I need to go full forth and say, something's going to happen. He will respond in kind.
Right. You and I have had that conversation before, and
but what I'm saying is that's the masculine side of me. I understand that it's very difficult for me to go smack another man in the face for not to reply in kind. If that person does not, what's the response? Hey man, are you okay? You literally just smacked me in the face.
Right.
Yeah, fuck you. Got it. I hear what we're gonna do right now. You have an opportunity. Just walk away.
You always have the opportunity to de-escalate.
Just walk away. Yes. That's what I'm getting at. Here's a person that experienced it, but me as a man, I look at that and say, I have to assume that's not going to happen. And if that person does that, holy shit, that person's a way bigger person than me because I literally just walked up to. I didn't talk to them.
Right.
I walked up and hit him. I should expect a response in kind. Why? Because it makes no fucking sense for me to go up to somebody and hit and smack them.
Yeah.
None. But if somebody is the bigger person there, they would say, dude, what is wrong with that guy? He literally walked up to somebody and smacked him and said nothing. Can somebody like contain him? Like maybe something wrong in his life. Like just don't let him hurt anybody or hurt themselves. Let's see if we could talk to this guy. I'm going to say this. Most females don't think in that way. They think it's okay for me to go hit a guy because what are they going to do to me? They don't have the same mindset.
Right.
That, well, what do you mean you're not going to respond in kind? I'm a woman. It's like,
that's part
but
of
you didn't treat me like a woman.
Correct. That's part of the problem. That's why I think right now what we're talking about is super important.
Yeah,
to me,
of course. That's why we're talking about it. So
there are too many people out there that don't share that.
Correct.
That don't share that opinion. It's like,
but why?
Because, I don't know why.
What? Well, no,
but you and I
can't
both
speak for them. But why
Correct.
don't you share that opinion?
I do because I lived the same experience as you lived.
No, but why don't you share the same experience as like that is incorrect? Like you shouldn't be doing that. Like if a girl came up to you and hit you, you would say like, yes, don't hit the girl back.
Everyone deserves grace. I give you the opportunity.
But why would you give the grace to the woman and not the man?
I give grace to everyone.
You're a better human.
Sure.
Does that make that's the higher level thinking?
Correct.
But I know a lot of people that would never ask a question.
Sure, but that's also why, to your point, this whole conversation has to come from a gender neutrality, right? Like it's not you're a toxic person.
That's what we're trying to allude to.
Yes, we're going to get to that because this is part of that too.
Yeah.
In those environments, right? You can't have everything your way, right? Like you can't have this. There's a point I was going to make to later, but you can't have this type of an interaction and expect a different outcome. If you approach me in that type of a way, you should expect that you're going to be responded to in that way because there is no gender anymore. You responded that way, right? And that's a lot of people, right? And I am okay with accepting the fact that there has to be this delineation of those types of experiences can't be defined by gender. That's no problem. I'm still a man because I define myself that way. I define myself that way. But if you're going to approach me and pretend that you can match because we can both agree that there are someone out there of a female gender that could literally destroy
100%.
the majority of men.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
So we can't just make it say...
You're talking about from a physical perspective.
Correct.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And I don't care who that person was that did it.
Right.
Because if it were a trained, coached,
UFC fighter.
A prepared person, that female would destroy you.
Of course.
And that person probably wouldn't think twice about it. I guarantee you that person wouldn't be the first mover.
Which is correct. Most people that are accustomed to dealing with violence, people that train martial arts, police officers sometimes, got to give them a little bit of leeway, but people that genuinely train to military people, that's another great one, right? They train for combat.
Right.
They train by being in mock combat with each other. They walk away with a different perspective. They're not the people that come and showboat to you most of the time because they understand the implications of that. Like if I'm about to go stab that person.
If a person is unwilling to engage you, that is the person you should be most fearful of,
Yes.
right? Be most fearful of the person that's willing to walk away in that moment.
So what you're pointing out is for everybody else that believes that that's the correct answer is to either violence or be like the world's best Karen. Like, I'm going to tell somebody that what you're doing is wrong, meaning judge. Most of those people usually are not the people that are accustomed to dealing with their own problems. They need some sort of higher level of, I'm right because X.
Right.
Whatever thing they want to draw upon. I'm part of the HOA and your car shouldn't be washed. You're like, who the fuck are you? And why are you in my face right now? But they have this sense of entitlement, which is what you're pointing out.
Mm-hmm.
People that are entitled believe that this is the mountain to die on. And what is that mountain? Your fucking, barista, what you just made is the shittiest drink. This is my fucking mountain I die on.
Right.
This is it. Where is the CEO at? I want to talk to them. It was the shittiest coffee I've ever had.
Right.
For whatever reason, man, that person, that became their, like, this is my cause.
Yeah. And for me, there's so much more.
But go back to the toxicity that we keep talking about. There is no toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. There's just toxicity, and they're toxic behaviors.
Yes.
And for you to feel entitled to come to me to tell me how to do my job that you fucking never done as a barista for a day, maybe what you could offer me is just a little bit of what? Radical candor, it's called, or honest feedback is the word that you and I use.
Right.
Hey, I just got this. Not to be bad, it doesn't taste the greatest. Could I possibly ask you to remake it for me? That's it.
Yeah.
That's all it required, was somebody to just step down off that ivory tower and say, look, a little humility. Don't take it the wrong way, because I could understand that if I was in your shoes. This drink, not the greatest. Could you possibly help me by just remaking it? No big deal. Just if you could remake it, if everything's good, I'll jam right out of here. Thank you. I appreciate it if you're willing to do that. When that's not what you get, everybody's going through something. We all have a life, right? Some shit's going on in your life. But because I'm not willing to be like, hey, little softness, whatever's going on in your life, I hear you. Could you help me in this way? Goes a long way. That's what they say, right? Kill them with kindness. But what you're speaking into is the toxicity that somebody stepping up to somebody else with that energy, that person might be ready to match it.
Right.
Always.
Oh, 100%. Like that's, yeah.
And you're hoping it's the match, not to go one over. Because then that's where just all the bad things happen.
Right. Like I have road rage, right? I'm the person that will literally, the car will be in park and the door's already open, right? Like it's still moving and I'm out the car, right? And
is this you today, or this is a
oh no,
previous
that is
Matt?
still today. That is a
Jesus.
character flaw that I have that
Okay.
I'm working on, right? Because now you get shot, right? Like it's like, and that's always the feedback is like you are going to get shot.
Yeah.
It's not a question of if, it's when, right? Because that's where like all these people are getting shot in these road rage interactions now. And it's crazy. So I've been significantly more mindful, and this kind of translates into, I think this is a good transition into why I'm more mindful with that.
Yeah, please.
I travel with 4 kids now, right? Like 2 of them are mine biologically, and 2 of them are inherited.
Can we explore that for a second? Because I don't understand your mentality on this. Why is that? Why does it have to come to that to be the catalyst? Why couldn't it just be you acknowledging? By the way, I have another very close friend that is exactly like you. Like, we'll go toe to toe with somebody for cutting them off or whatever else.
Oh, so
like that.
Let me. So hang on a second. I want to define this a little bit further to answer your question. My road rage comes from people being irresponsible intentfully, right? Like if I, even if I believe, right? Like if I notice that you're texting and you're swerving, I'm going to be more mindful of what I'm doing and either get by you or get past you or fall back further so I'm not part of the equation, right? It's when people do something deliberately, like if that person pulls in front of you and brake checks you because maybe I was going too slow or fast for them, right? Like, and that's happened recently. My response and reaction is when someone's bringing it to me, not because
So you just feel entitled and you're like, it's my duty to teach you a lesson right now.
But no, that person, that's when you feel as the other driver that you're trying to teach me a lesson. Now I take it personal.
Now
right?
you're responding in kind.
And now I freak the fuck out.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Like have a meltdown. Right. So now I have chosen the
But
path.
why is it that it's your kids to be the catalyst to tell you to calm the hell down?
No, because it's
not
behavioral, right? Like you have to treat that, right? Like you have
Sure.
to you understand what I'm saying? Like you have to reprogram. The program exists. You've done something to me, now I'm going to respond. I have to reprogram my brain. The catalyst for the reprogramming is I'm transporting 5 other people, 6 other people, 4 other people, doesn't matter. It's no longer just me in this vehicle, right? It's no longer me in control or me out of control. I have responsibilities. And I now have to reprogram because the emotional response is going to occur regardless of who's in the car.
I'm going to say that's toxic masculinity.
Sure. Yeah. I completely
It's a
agree.
toxic behavior.
That is
it's just your
super
guy.
toxic behavior, which is why I don't do it anymore, right? But
Fair.
the catalyst for that was for me being more mindful because of my kids, because now I don't, 1, want them to see that, right? 2, I don't want them to inherit that violent response, right? I want them to understand that I'm going to probably verbally respond with, fuck that guy. That guy's being an asshole. That guy's being irresponsible, right? Like, why did that guy just brake check me? Or why did that guy just swerve into me, right? I want them to know that I'm going to acknowledge it, but in that manner, right? Like, it's not like I sped up and tried to brake check them or try to run them off the road or any of that stuff, right? They see that there's a little bit of emotional intelligence there because there's a response,
Right.
but it's not that response. It's a different response, right? Because you still have to express yourself on however you feel necessary. But I don't want them to see that a violent response is the appropriate or correct response.
So can we go there now? Because this is where we come full circle,
Yeah.
right? What is your plan? Because kids are sponges. You don't have to teach kids shit.
Nothing.
They pick it all up.
Yes, but that's
So-
why this is so many more other things.
Yeah.
And what frustrates me the most, and this is where I think it's not even just that it's a moving target anymore. Like, boys raise boys, right? Like,
Why do you say that?
because kids have kids, right? And that stems from a lot of this.
Explain that.
When you have a 15, 14, 16-year-old person, even an 18-year-old person that hasn't had any life experiences, and they're having kids and having to raise those
There we
kids
go.
while they're educating themselves, trying to find jobs, trying to find their place in life, not just the workforce or in their educational experience.
What do you mean? We did that for hundreds of years. It's perfect.
Correct.
We had
but-
no problems.
Yes, but these terms and these types of situations didn't occur before the agricultural revolution because we were farmers. This didn't occur until after the Industrial Revolution when we had machinery and we mechanized things and there was less.
You weren't there. It's an opinion. So you
Sure,
don't know.
but people are no longer. Sure, it's an opinion. However, we are walking examples of that. We do not have a nuclear household. We don't. We don't have a traditional family set.
But what? Okay. But that didn't solve anything by having a nuclear household.
No,
or white picket fence.
I'm not saying white picket fence. I'm saying the way that society has evolved is 200 years ago. We didn't have the influences. We had survival. You're not working to survive right now. You're not. You have a house full of food.
Fair.
Full of food. You have a fucking house. You have a car, 2 of them. I'm not going to throw your business out there, but you have a really nice grounding mat, which I just found out about, right? I'm just saying, like, you're not struggling to find the seeds today to survive till tomorrow. Try to find, water. You're just not. You have a toilet.
What you're saying more, it's the commonality of that was more. I mean, it's still here today, right? Like I find it difficult to try to like plan to go visit India because of how real it is that you see the social difference.
Yeah. Listen, sure, but you and I have traveled the world. We've experienced so many countries. We've experienced so many cultures, and in more impoverished places.
But as a tourist, it's very different.
Yes. However, you and I have both experienced it from a real perspective. As a tourist, yes, but I've been in the jungles in South America, in Ecuador, in Dominican Republic with families where
It's rough. It's tough to see.
I'm not a tourist anymore, right?
Right.
Like I'm here with a purpose and an intent, and it changed my life. It gave me perspective. It really was the defining moment for me in that experience. You know this, but not relevant. But I manufactured chocolate at one point, from the bean to the bar. So we got to travel to a lot of places, meet a lot of people, and what I learned after the second or third trip into these jungles was money does not matter. It doesn't. You can give these people all the money in the world. It doesn't give them access to clean water, to medical facilities, to the basic needs that we feel are basic needs. Doesn't. Money doesn't fix that problem. It 100% does not, right? And most of those people don't want it. And that's the hardest part, is to understand that the money's not going to fix the problem.
Yes, but to kind of come back full circle on what we're talking about when it comes to that is toxic traits are learned.
No, yes, but there's too many outside influences. So I know we kind of went left there, but it was...
But hold on. Let's get... Because I want to... This is me trying to ask you this question.
Okay.
Okay. What is your plan so that your kids don't pick up your toxic traits?
I've found a way to be more mindful on my approach. And why this is important for me to express now is because this is important to a point that we made before, where I'm failing currently. It's where I believe that I can walk into my house every day and I have one or two of them that will always be affectionate with me. One or two of them that won't be.
Okay.
Right. I say I love you to all of them because you know how I am with that. I say I love you to everybody. Right. Like I'm so open and honest with that. Like love is for everyone. Right. Yeah. 100%. Mel and I play fight. Like we do. And you've scolded me with that so many times, right? And it's a problem with one of them. And it's something that I'm working on so that he understands, like, Bubba, you can't do that, right? Because he sees it and doesn't understand that it's playful. He just sees it as, you just spanked mom, I'm going to come spank you.
But pause right there, because I think this is a great example, and this is why I asked you the question.
No, this is huge. This is actually one of the things that I wanted to touch on.
This is how we come full circle. Okay. My question to you was, what is your plan to make sure that your toxic traits don't continue on? That was the question. What I was hoping for you to kind of lean into is, there's nothing I can do to teach, air quotes, my kids not to have the toxic traits. I can only do. Meaning I have to stop them within me, because then that gives them the best chance for not to take them further.
Yes, and
you cannot say, do as I say, not as I do.
Correct. And to add to that, because I'm not a but person, I'm an and person. And, right? Because it's not a but, it's an and. Because it's not, I'm accepting everything you just said.
Okay.
And I believe all of that. And that's why my mindfulness has been to demonstrate to them that there is an openness that you have to have. You have to accept that. I have to stop them from crying because they cry to get things, right?
Sure.
They're not crying because they're, because they're hurt or something. They get something really, they're crying because I told them they couldn't use the towel to do that exercise. I'm like, hi, this is not the appropriate time for that, right? Like I'm trying to teach them. It's like, hi, you can't cry to get your way. You can't cry to mom because dad said no, or vice versa.
Right.
And I want to be better at that, because I believe that there is also a genetic imprint from all of our traumas that is passed to our children. And I believe that they have somewhere inside of them all of those experiences that I've had previously.
Can I challenge that?
Sure, you can, but it's not going to change my mind.
I get that. Just for the sake of talking.
Sure.
You see my resistance to it. how can you say it's genetic and not just it's what you observed? Because you were so kind to share your story. And we heard the story. None of that was genetic. That was all real. Like real. It happened to you. So there's no gene within you that's trying to express itself through the toxicity.
Yeah,
It's
but you don't
literally
think that
hold on. It's what you experience, my guy. You experience a lot.
yes.
How is it that it's now a genetic marker activated in you like a Manchurian candidate?
But you don't think that somewhere in your
No.
programming,
No.
your responses that have been learned
Nature
have influenced that.
This is the conversation that everybody has, and I'm not the correct person to have it, but we're going to have it.
Well, neither am I, because I have a reference, and you're going to have to answer to it as well.
Sure. Nature or nurture, right? That's what we hear. What is it? Nature would be more to what you're talking about, which is
instinct,
like, right? Or
right.
like
Instinctual.
maybe it is genetic, or is it the nurturing of that person? I hear your story, and I find it difficult to say it's in your nature.
Okay.
It's the nurture that happened. Time and time again, where was your champion to say, Matt, I'm here for you? I hear what your experience was. Can I help you through that? What does that look like? It's just a person that cared, right? Like we all deserve a person that cares.
Right.
Some of us just don't get it. Again, it's not that you don't deserve it. It's not that you're not worth it. It's sometimes we just don't get it. And one of the beauty for the people that don't get it is we get to become that person for somebody else.
Right.
Not because they deserve it. It's because you say, if that card wasn't for me, it doesn't mean that I can't provide it to the world. I see the gap. I want to clear that gap because I'm the one that saw it.
Right.
So when you think of it in those contexts, right, how much of it is actually a genetic Manchurian thing that's alive now in you because you hit some age compared to this history of continuous behaviors that were done around you, continuously reaffirmed to you. And that is what we do to our kids, my guy. Not because... God, I've made so many mistakes with my kids. Does that make sense? Like,
No, I do.
There's,
yeah, but
there's no perfect in me.
I have two things. So
Yeah.
the first thing is, I spank my children.
Okay.
Question: do you approve or disapprove? That's not loaded. At all.
It's not loaded, but I can answer it. I said, it's not something that I can judge you for.
Do you believe in spanking your kids? Do you believe in physical correction?
Again, I never spanked mine, but mine were older when they came into my life, right?
Sure.
But why didn't I spank them? There was nothing that ever happened where that was the appropriate response.
Got it.
The physical pain.
Would you be open to it?
Yeah, of course. But
Okay.
again,
Yeah.
here's an example. Let me give you that. And this is probably a better example because remember, my kids were older when they came into my life. But I never had young kids. But where's the comparison? Nobody eat me up in the comments about this. I'm just an analogy or a comparison.
These are just, we're trying to have real honest conversations here.
I've had a puppy before. I've had a dog. I've been frustrated with my dog. I've spanked my dog. Why did I spank my dog, though? I just didn't know how to communicate to him the thing that he did wrong. In me, and where's the issue now, right? Like now I've seen dog training videos and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh my God. I should have never had a dog until I had gone through all this training about how to appropriately train dogs and maintain them.
Or paid someone to do it, but yeah, sure.
Yeah. But the comparison I'm making is the dog never deserved for me to spank it. Like the dog wasn't the issue. I was.
Yeah.
I didn't have the training to understand how to communicate appropriately. So the frustration of not being able to do that, the spanking was the only thing I knew what to do. So again, I never had small children. They were all older, but the only thing I liken it to is my frustration with the dog when I had him, like, don't take a shit. Like, God damn it. Like, I don't want to clean that up. And like, I can't talk to you about it, so I'm going to take your nose, put it near it, and spank you. And hopefully that pain I inflicted on you becomes a negative memory to the shit you just had.
Right.
But that's dumb. Even me saying it's stupid because it makes no logical sense. What does he know? He's like, I had to take a shit. I had to go. What's
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
But I'm saying the reason why I needed to do the physical pain was because that's the only thing I knew what to do. And maybe a 3-year-old kid, you're like, how do you logically, hey, can you sit down for a second? Let me have this conversation. They're like, fucking no, dude, your attention span's too much. So then you're like, got it. I got to spank.
But I will respond with, it's a tool in the toolbox.
No, I didn't never say it was wrong.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that you are.
Right.
Because there are people that will say that, right?
No, I'm not. No.
Because there are, and that's okay. To make it even worse, I will spank my child in public. And you can judge me all you want. I don't care. When I've felt I've exhausted the other options that I have on whether it's corrective behavior or talking or, just
the tools in your toolbox.
Yeah.
Got it.
Going through the 3 or 4 other interactions. Now I'm going to resort to that. Now I have your attention. We're not going to do that anymore. Right?
Yeah.
Because it will progress from here. Right? Because that to me is the extreme side of it. And
everybody can judge you.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, the only ones that are going to judge you are your kids. They'll look back. And the only people you have to answer to is them. That's how I feel about it.
I agree.
You have to answer to them.
Right. But that's also why, for me, this is why this is important from the toxicity side too, is like it's not just the kids raising kids. It's like I have to get my kids off of the tablet, right? Because there's so many more influences now. It has nothing to do with what you and I do or don't do, truly. Because there's so many more people out there, right? Like you look at the sample set of the engagement that they have. It wasn't the internet for us. It was people, right? I don't know how you grew up. I know how I grew up.
AOL, baby.
This is before that. It is. It's like, this is Little League, where we had our friends' dads that were coaching the teams. It's the interactions with the parents, right? Like you got to see other people in mature situations doing mature things, whatever it is, bowling, drinking, gambling, playing darts, pool. What's a really cool trait that your dad used to do? Oh, I used to drive the ski boat, right? Like that was always cool. My dad was always the one that drove the boat, whether we were fishing or skiing or tubing. My dad was always the guy on the boat, right? That was a cool dad, right? That was the dad I want to be. I want that, right?
Okay.
But people don't have those things. Those situations occur, right? Like those people are out there, but now it's less communal, right? It's less community like that. Like there are less, like specifically here in Vegas, you don't know your neighbors, right? Like you don't know the people around you. It's smaller groups. Those people that have what we have right now is the anomaly, right? Like you don't have strong social bonds like that with other people en masse, very individualized. And now it's not just, okay, Steven's a little off, Matt's a little calmer, Jim's a little calmer, Ozzy's a little calmer. It's like there's so much more confusion that exists out there because now they don't know which way's up or down. Because it's not just the way that I act or that you act. It's the way that
But you're bordering very closely on whose responsibility is it to raise a child.
Yeah, but that's not what this is about. Like I'm not saying that. I'm saying, because it's all about your actions, right? It's your question was like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. I'm doing all these things to try to prevent them from getting outside influence, right? I'm trying to be
But I'm not saying the outside influence is the thing that we're talking about. We're talking about the influence in the house.
But that's what I'm saying, though. The influence. Correct. But I'm saying the influence in the house, I don't know what percentage of that exists anymore as the whole. Where before, when there wasn't anything, right? You saw your dad scream at your mom, beat your mom, whatever. It doesn't matter. You saw all those things. Those are all really toxic traits from humans. Your mom threw things at your dad. She stabbed your dad. She hit your dad with a baseball bat.
Yeah.
She drove the car through the fence. Whatever. I'm making all these things up.
Right.
But you saw all that, right? Like you now lived through that, and that's your story. Well, those things still exist on top of everything else.
Right.
all those new influences that we're not planning for. I'm not prepared for that.
But hold on. I hear you. Valid point. But you have no control over that.
I'm not saying that there's control.
Hear me out. I'm saying. Let me say it differently. You have no influence over the external influence to your child. It's there because they go to this massive world called the World Wide Web from whatever device they have that's nearest to them. All you can do, and this is my own personal belief, parents don't believe or don't think about it in this way. You're not raising a child. You're raising another human being to be able to take on the reality of the world that exists. Let me say that again. You are raising a human being to be able to take on to the reality that exists now. Yes. You're not making them to be ready for the 1950s or 1900s. You need to prepare them for, take their age, make them 20 years old minimum and say, that year, I got to prepare them for that world, whatever that world looks like. Yes.
Okay, so let's build on that for a second.
Okay.
I give them a tablet. I delete YouTube. What do? They put it back on. I delete it again. I take the tablet away. They find it on a laptop. Sure. Take the laptop away. They find it on the TV.
Are you preparing them for the world that exists? No.
So hang on. So I'm trying to limit their interaction with these things.
But you're not prepared. Hear me out.
No, I'm getting to a point.
Okay.
So you have all these things, right? You're building on all those pieces, right? You're trying to remove the equation. It's not their time. It's not their time. When do you think, let's take something, because this is a point I wanted to talk about, and I think this is a good kind of bridge to that, is when does a man or a woman when does a boy become a man and when does a girl become a woman, right? So when does a boy become a man?
It depends on how you define that.
Yes, but in modern society, there's less of a definition, right? And then kind of the way it's defined now is there's actually 3 phases, like because you have a child, you have an adolescent, then you have an adult, right?
Well, let's take a step back. It depends on who's defining that. Some people would define becoming a man as when they have sex for the first time, and maybe the female at the same time. Well, I think that's a pretty easy one to figure it out. Now, whether they had it consensually for themselves and it wasn't somebody else forcing them to, that I don't know, right? Like, is it right for somebody else to choose that time for them? No, I don't believe so. They should have chose that for themselves.
Yes.
But let's go back to how were things before? Well, the idea is that there was these rituals that they could follow to basically say, I'm 12 or I'm 18 or I'm 17 or I'm 16.
Yeah, I get to go hunting.
I want to go through that, through that ritual to see if I can come out the other side as being a man. Meaning it is their, kind of what I was saying about the whole sex thing, it is their decision to step into that, whatever that ritual would be, to hopefully come out the other side and say, great, what was the thing I just said? It is the choice that they made whenever they were ready for that.
Yes.
But we don't have modern rituals for that.
Correct. But we have a benchmark, right? We have developmental benchmarks, right? Like where your brain is prepared enough to accept certain things and certain realities or certain understandings, right?
And everybody's at a different age for that.
I agree. But what I'm saying is right now, the information that a 5-year-old has access to, regardless of what you do, right? Because it's not, again, everyone has access. I can't control what they do at school.
Well, you have parental controls on YouTube that you can enact. You can't necessarily put it on like.
Sure, I don't. I'm not trying to go down a different side of this, but I can't dictate how they're spoken to by their friends or by their teachers.
But that's the world they have to interact with.
Yes, but what I'm saying is now we're influencing them at a younger age with information that they're not prepared.
Here's an example. I'll give you a story. My daughter, she was 14 at the time. She's like, hey, Steve, love to go hang out with my friends. I'm like, what do you mean? She was 15, actually. What year are you 15? Well, that means you know 14-year-olds and you know 16-year-olds. Well, what do 16-year-olds have?
A car.
Of course.
Access.
Of course. So she's like, hey, I would love to go hang out with my friend. Say, okay, baby, like, what? Just what are you guys going to do and where? Oh, we want to go to this park way across town. I was like, baby, no. Just, it's better for you to just forgo that. Don't go. Okay? I answered all her questions about it. It wasn't like, no, that's it. It was like, no, I have questions. Why can't I? Blah, blah, blah. Explain. Okay, go to work the next day. What do I get? Phone call. From who? My daughter, because she didn't want to call her mom because she knew she'd be in a world of shit. She says, hey, could you possibly pick me up? I'm like, what do you mean? You're supposed to be at school. It's like midday. Yeah, well, don't want to kind of get into it now. Can you just like come pick me up? I'm over here. Where is that? Across town. I'm like, dude, it's going to take me like 20 minutes to get there. Can you please come pick me up? I was like, of course I can. Call out of work. Well, leave work, basically. Drive over there, and I get there. And what do I see? A car pulled over, and probably 7 of them standing there. And I'm like doing the math. It was like a little Honda. I was like, yeah, that the math ain't mathin', dude. What's up? Well, remember the thing you told me not to do? I did. And I went with my friends, and because more people wanted to come, kind of packed in this car. He got pulled over. They saw the car, made us all get out, made us call our parents to come pick us up. This is exactly why I told you not to. But now, here's your learning moment. No problem, get in the car. She's like, well, actually, it's okay if we give my friends a ride because they didn't want to call their parents. And I'm like, I will get them home safely. They have to tell their parents. And they're going to call them and tell them, well, I'm on the way. Do they have to? I was like, yep. Okay. So she gets in the car with 2 of her friends. I go and I drop each one of them off. And of course, like now I had called off work. So I was like, hey, let's go get lunch. Right? Because now it's like kind of closer to lunchtime. So we're going to talk about this. She's like, yeah, I know. She's like, I'm sorry, but let's start crying. Kind of like you. I was like, not the time. Just wipe those tears away. Let's have a conversation. Do you remember when you asked me and I told you no? Yeah. Okay. Why do you think that was? Do you think that me as an older person understands that stuff like this happens or could happen? She's like, yeah. I said, then you have to realize that when you ask me if you could do something and I say no and I explain to you, I can't explain to you all the possibilities. I can only explain to you the thing that I can foresee to the best of my ability. Now you decided to have this learning moment and you get to own that. And we're going to tell your mom because she has to know. But know that whatever happens, you chose that. And what I was preparing her for, whatever the mom wanted to do to like, you know, whatever. Okay. I said, great. You're going to have to tell your mom and then I'll talk to her later. Don't worry. So I do that. All that happens. And now here's this learning moment. And she still remembers that to this day. Right? And so why did I go into that whole story? Because I can only do so much to prepare her for the world. Then there's going to be a choice that she makes to experience that world. At that moment that she just chooses to experience that world, all I can do is be a support system for her to process it. You chose that. You get to own it. It's now your moment. Another example. Back in the early days of the web, right? You could go to these websites that you put like I forget what the website. Do you remember that what they say? It's like death.com or something like that. It's just like the worst shit ever. There was just bad videos.
I think one was rotten.com.
That's the one. That's the one. Yeah. Holy shit. So there was like everything, right? Here I am. God, I think I was like 15 watching people blow their heads off. Like just, yeah, you're just like, what did I just watch? Again, that's not my parents were shitty parents. That's not, you know, nobody was the person to influence me. I didn't have a horrible life. I had a genuine curiosity about this shit, and you could have never stopped me.
Correct. And I agree with that. But you're also talking about we're at a better developmental place at that time, right? Like you're talking about teenage years and that type of stuff. Like a 5-year-old can find that today.
Sure.
And will.
my question back to you is then why is your 5-year-old, why is that a curiosity to your 5-year-old? Because it wasn't to me at 5. Not because it's available. It's because I had a curiosity to go seek it. Big difference, my man. And it doesn't matter that, oh, well, it was harder before. Dude, there were still Playboy magazines. Does that make sense? Like, people could have found it if they wanted
Correct.
to.
They can find anything. Yes.
So it's not like I tripped and I fell and there was 2 girls, 1 cup on your laptop, Dad. Why? Like it ruined me.
Yeah.
It was, no, you went to go find that.
My challenge is trying to figure out why the curiosity occurs at such a younger age now, and not trying to prevent it so much as trying to not allow it to have an undue influence. Right?
Here's another example to that. Okay. I remember that when I was in 6th grade, there was a girl that obviously was a little bit more developed than most. And I always had a curiosity about her and to look, and it's different. But I never had like this sexual tinge to it. Not yet. Right. That wasn't a reality for me.
Right.
But lo and behold, by the end of the year, that girl was hooking up with some guy, you know, like, because nobody kept secrets. So everybody knew that they were hooking up.
Sure.
And to me, it was always like, whoa, that's crazy. That's awesome, dude. I wish, like, if she would have told me, I would have. No, because she would have told me and I would have done nothing and hid and maybe ran it. Does that make sense? It's like my own curiosity, my own want for that wasn't there. So I didn't seek it. You track? I didn't seek it.
Yeah. No, I do.
Was it available? Of course. Was it going to be her? Of course not. Fucking nobody would want to touch me when I was 6 years old. I was such a dumb, nerdy kid. But do you follow what I'm saying?
Still a nerdy kid.
Yeah, fair. I had to go seek it for it to come to me. So you're now into the realm of saying, if my child is going to seek this and is asking me these questions, I have to find a way for their mind at that time to explain these things to them. I'm not going to go talk about 2 girls, 1 cup with my child if they're talking about the birds and the bees. What I'm going to go do is do what? Hey, you know what? I'm going to go and say, hey, well, you know, there's people, sometimes they like each other, sometimes they go find a way, and they kind of show each other how they like each other at times. Do you kind of picking up what I'm putting down?
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's why I think, you know, for me, it's some of it's prevention and some of it is just blending into, I don't want my kids to see the negativity without the explanation, right? Like, I don't, it's not even, because to me, that's the toxicity, right? It's not the masculinity. I want them to see the positivity that comes from being a man. I want them to see the positivity that comes from owning who they are, whatever they become, right? Like however they evolve into a human being. But I want them to own that, right? If you have a more dominant personality, if you have a more, you know, following personality, if you're a little bit more passive, if you want to be, you know, more aggressive in your nature, where you are good at communicating or worse at communicating. Like one of my children is hard of hearing, right? So it's like we're working on his communication. So I don't want that to ever be a crutch for him, right? Where it's like, instead of focusing on the fact that he can't hear, right, and trying to get him the ability to not necessarily hear better, to communicate better, I want to work on his speech and not focus on the fact that he's hard of hearing. I want to focus on the fact that he can hear. To what level is irrelevant. He can hear. How do we focus on getting him to communicate better, right? And to understand that there's nothing wrong with that.
But you see, that is the approach I'm talking about. You're working the problem, and you're working the problem that resides within that person at that time. Person meaning your child,
sure.
Right? This is the bridge that we are now at. Let's cross it together, right? Like that's how I see it. How you do that, every parent's going to have a different choice. All I said to that was, you have to remember that you're raising a human being to deal with the reality of the world that's waiting for them. And this is where I believe a lot of people, their parents do them one wrong. They raise them to live in a world that doesn't exist.
Oh, yeah. They raise them into the narrative of like, this is like, yes, this is not sunshine and rainbows, guys. Yeah. Like, this is not, the world isn't perfect, right? And that's why for me also, like, this is the other lead into we need masculinity and we need masculine traits. This is not me asking you because I want to know, right? This is me giving you some information because I chose.
Mm-hmm.
I chose to join the military at 17 because I felt that obligation. Why do I feel that obligation still to this day?
Don't know.
Because you didn't want to.
Like me personally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you didn't. And I believe you're entitled to that right. And I would never want you to go. I want you to go. Today, I would join again so my kids didn't have to go. Without hesitation. Right now, if everything went left in the world.
Got it. But let's take a step back. You put that pressure on yourself.
No, there's no, stop. There's no pressure. I don't feel that pressure.
Here,
Let
me finish. Let me get the thought out.
Okay.
You believe that you want to go. No problem. Thank you for your service. And I'll say that to anyone because I do mean that, right? Like you decided to do something that I believe is difficult that I myself chose. Like it's just not for me, but that doesn't mean it shouldn't be for you and for everybody else that does that. Like good for you guys and thank you for the service.
Correct.
100% believe that. Okay. As soon as you say, okay, great. I decided that for me, you can't then say, fine, let me go and put something else for somebody else's choice. Everybody gets a choice.
Yeah. So let me codify that though.
If your kid wanted to go, it's not you going on their behalf.
Yes. That's why I want to caveat a little bit. I don't believe you should ever have to go if you don't want to.
Well, that's how it is.
Correct, but it's not because the draft exists.
Well, that's how it is until something requires you to put in the service.
You as a male had to sign up for that.
I did.
You did.
Yeah.
You did. That's a fact. That's the way we run our.
And if something were to happen where that is required, what do you think I'm going to do?
I don't think you'd run away from the obligation.
No.
Yes. I
had a choice.
Hope.
No, but here, I had the choice. You remove that choice from me, what do? Sign me up, chief. Like I'm here to do my duty. As I hope everybody feels that way, right?
Yes, but I hear you.
Right.
However, that is you having a higher moral obligation or a higher self-awareness.
I don't think it's morally better. I just think that it's honestly a conversation that I have to have with myself to say, do I believe in that?
Yeah, but now you have to, there's so many other things to unpack there. Like, do you believe in the system? Do you believe in the reason or the purpose? Do you believe in what's actually occurring?
I don't believe in politics. I don't believe
Correct.
in any of those.
So
but
that's
I
my
believe
point.
that if I'm going to get called up, and so are you, all I have that I can control is me.
Yes.
And I better fucking show up.
And this isn't, I don't want you to take yourself as the actual example, okay? Because this has nothing to do with you.
Well,
you
I'm
are
the
a
only one
different
here.
person, right? But if there's two people standing there and it's you and who's another prior service person that we know?
Well, it doesn't matter. Just but there's a prior service person.
But
Got it.
Again, but even if I had to make the decision between you and me standing there, I'd never pick you because you didn't want to and I did. I would pick me over you every day of the week. That has nothing to do with you not being a warrior, nothing to do with you not being a soldier, not any of that stuff. I had it in me to want to do that.
Yeah, that's
right?
fair.
And that's the way I look at it, right? I would do that today just to make sure that no one had to do it that didn't want to, because I would never want someone to be in that organization or be in that situation if they didn't want to be.
Did you watch Starship Troopers, the movie?
Yes.
This is aging us a little bit.
Oh,
right?
no, for sure.
So, yes, that's kind of what you see, right? Some people wanted to be there and some people did not.
Right.
But that's how humanity works. There's always going to be every flavor of something.
I hear you, but that's
Okay.
why I wanted to fulfill the obligation for me to make sure that I could be of service to someone else, right?
This
like
is perfect. Yeah.
And that to me is what helps me protect that, right? And that to me is why I don't define that as being a toxic trait, right? Because those types of human beings that might want to do that, right?
But the toxic, again, let's kind of come full circle with that one. You and I had agreed that toxic is a behavior.
Yes, but they define people that want to do those types of things, right? People that want to go into war or combat as a toxic, that could be a toxic trait. Can we agree on that? If you're going for the wrong, but if you're going for the wrong purpose.
But hold on, let's take a step. Now you're into philosophy.
No, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying people stereotype, and they would stereotype those types of people.
That stereotype is something that has to go away. You and I just talked about that it's a toxic trait or behavior, and we understand it to be toxic because it's not good for that person or anybody else, right?
Yes,
we kind of came to that agreement.
Yes, but that's why I'm using this as the example, because people will use it as my excuse. I don't use it as an excuse. I don't use it as an excuse onto why I act the way that I am. I made that choice
because you went into service. Is that what you're saying?
Correct. They will classify you just based off of the fact that you were in that. Like if you're a Marine, you're a fucking Marine. You're just a dickhead, right? Like, no, I know good Marines. I know dickhead Marines too.
Right.
Right. I know asshole airmen, right? Like it has nothing to do with the branch of the service they chose to go to.
So can we go back to where we were, which is, to me, it's all nurture. You were in the service, you were nurtured in a certain way. So were some other people. And if they were, forget the military, think about Ivy League kids that go into Ivy League schools. They were nurtured to drive at, I must go fulfill a family thing, blah, blah, blah. My dad knows whoever.
Sure.
I'm going to go to Georgetown because that's what I do. And I was nurtured in this, like, I'm better than thou.
Yeah.
And when I come out of that, fucking peasant, why are you talking to me?
Right.
Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
Do you know where I went to school? But that's nurture. That doesn't mean that person is forever a piece of shit.
Well, it's but I use that to Mel too.
Well,
listen here, Penn State. You know what I mean?
But the point of that is, we're still always butting up against the nurture portion of everybody's life. Somebody was told doing that was okay. What do you mean you know poor people? I don't comprehend that. Nobody's poor. It's like, well, sorry to tell you, when you walk outside of your master plan community, that's the reality of the world. Your parents just hid you from it.
Sure.
It's still nurture. You follow why I keep saying this. So if we really go back to and we parse this, you're always going to find what's always left when you open that box. It's always going to come back to somewhere in that person's life. There was some sort of nurturing done to them that led to this trait that is toxic for them and people around them. Fair?
Yeah, 100%.
I never seen a person by nature be a piece of shit. And maybe I'm guarded, right? Like maybe I'm sheltered. I've yet to experience somebody in my day-to-day life and anywhere I've been to where I was like, whoa, dude, that person, kill them. They are horrible people.
Right.
They just look, they got a demon in them. I have not. Now, I've watched many documentaries on like serial killers. Bro, not okay. Most of them didn't come out with a loving family and they're like, I'm going to murder everybody. They went through some pretty fucked up shit.
Some of them did, though.
I don't know which one, but maybe you can send me the video of that. Because I don't know. I honestly, most of them, none of them came from a loving home.
The one that always comes to mind, just because I never reference Dahmer because I'm from Milwaukee, but like Kuklinski, like the Iceman, like you would have never known.
He came from a really broken home. What are you talking about?
The home he was created, right?
No, I'm saying.
Got it.
But remember, nurture. I'm in the nurture.
Got it. Yeah.
And nature would be, they came out the womb psychopaths.
Sure.
No, most of them had very traumatic or very horrible nurturing, which, dude, I would snap. If you had me in a situation where there was no light around me, I'm scared of the darkness that I could unleash. I think most of us could feel that way about our shadow, our darkness within us.
Yeah, but I do believe that is part of what masculinity will end up becoming for anybody, right? Male or female. Like you have to own both sides of the spectrum, right? Like we said, you have to own your masculinity and own your femininity.
But one of them is not the equation to light and dark. Just wanted to clear that up.
No, yeah. I'm not saying it is, but what I'm saying is like that is for me. That is how you accept the fact that there are some of those things, right? Like you have to acknowledge your shadow. You have
We
to.
all have a darkness within us,
Yes.
but it's not feminine is light, masculine is dark.
Correct.
And just to clear this up, there is a feminine, masculine way that we perceive things, which is fine. The shadow is speaking into the darkness that you carry, and we all have it.
Right.
Yes, everybody has darkness. Your goal is to make peace with it,
Right.
not to hide from it or to allow it to have the captain's share, because that's when these people have made that decision. What I'm saying is what leads people to that, in my opinion, most of the time is the nurture part of it. When all you know is darkness, you give to darkness. You're like, this is it, dude. Let me go be the baddest motherfucker out there. Everybody get out of my way. And those people exist. Why? They didn't come out the womb. They were nurtured where darkness consumed them.
Yeah.
So do you see why I keep going back to the nurture portion? That's the most important. So going back to you on this, that's where my question came from. If you truly accept that it's nurture, you would say, for now, because your children are younger, just like mine were at the time, I have to take some sort of ownership to say, there are some toxic things that I do that I'm going to do my best to make sure that those don't get passed on to my children.
Yeah, but unpack the nurture side though.
The
Right.
nurture is you were nurtured into it, meaning things
No.
that have happened.
People will tend to, and this is coming from just a current experience where
Yeah.
I had made the comment of, because I would never use the term nurture, right? Like, why are you glorifying this, whatever this was, and not this, right? So one was, why are you glorifying the femininity and not the masculinity?
This is a conversation that somebody had with you
Correct.
and said, hey,
This is a real conversation.
so
But this is me going to someone else. Why are you trying to buy my son a doll so that he can comb their hair? Because he likes combing my hair. He likes to comb your hair. He doesn't like combing hair. He likes to comb your hair. Why don't you buy him a football? Why? Why didn't you buy him a football? He likes playing football. He likes to go outside and with one of my other sons and play football. Why didn't you buy him a football? Because you're projecting You're projecting your thing, whatever that is, whatever your narrative is, onto him.
which is possible.
Sure, but this is the toxic part. What was the response back to me? Well, you're deflecting your masculinity and wanting to buy. I said, no, time out. Because you want him to play sports. I said, no, I don't want my kids to play any sports.
Well, hold on. Because this gets a little sticky, right? Let's go there. You use the ball as an example,
Yes.
not as the thing that you wish that person procured. Fair?
Correct.
I don't think that person took it that way.
No, they did. Because at the end of it, they tried to respond and say that I was projecting my masculinity.
Just bear with me.
Okay.
You did not use that example as that there was a bitter gift to have, and it was the ball. You asked the question, where did you come to acquire the gift and why? Was it because, you see some acts and I think this would be really good for them. So like, hey, I think that they enjoy it. I got it because I think they would enjoy it. Your question was, great. Why was it not some other thing that they enjoy? Why was it that? Fair? Like
Yes.
that was the conversation?
No, yes.
Okay. I wasn't in that conversation, so I can't speak for you or that other person, but I think that is a good conversation to have for you with the person, not in regards that was the wrong toy. Right? Which I
Yeah,
think
it
is
had
what you were
nothing to
saying.
do with the toy.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
But
I gotcha.
what I think people do is they try to be lopsided, right? Like
What do you mean lopsided?
you're trying to give more attention to the feminine side of this equation because you want this person to be more accepting, more emotional, more everything, right? Instead of equally nurturing the masculine side and the feminine side, right? It's okay to be a boy. It's okay to be a man. It's okay to do these things because it's important to have those masculine qualities. It's okay to be a protector. It's okay to be a leader. It's okay to do all those things. It's okay to have that masculine energy. But now you were trying to feed this feminine side more than we're feeding that side because we believe that this is a better quality than that. And that's what bothered me in that equation is because
But
they'll
that's the
tend
nurture.
to. No, I get it, but we're not nurturing things equally.
No. Hold on. Hear what I'm saying. All of that is nurture. Who's the one nurturing? That becomes the critical thing. Who's the one providing the nurture, and what does that nurture look like? Example, if you live with a parent that's a chain smoker, you had no choice in that. But you were nurtured in a household that prioritized smoking at the risk of your own health or whatever might happen, because that person cared more about themselves
Yes.
than looking at the bigger picture and say, hey, maybe this is not good for them. You know what? Chain smoker, I smoke outside. You will never smell anything on my kid. I don't put it around. I walk far. I live in an apartment. I walk straight down. I smoke down there. It sucks. I have to leave all the time, but it's such a commitment to myself for the nurturing of my child I can't hide it. Where I'm going to smoke again. And what if hopefully that just hurts you a little bit every time you have to tell your child, hey, going outside again, I'm going to go smoke. You're like, ugh, sucks that I have to acknowledge that to them.
Right.
Like, yeah, maybe hopefully that helps you, that one day, maybe you smoke a little bit less.
Right.
Or maybe you don't indulge in those things. Me, I'm not a smoker, but fuck, if I won't screw up some goddamn gummy bears or something, like that's equally as bad.
Yeah,
Like, hey,
snacking, any of those things.
Yeah.
Correct, 100%. And
so back to that, you have that happening. Who is the one providing the nurture? And what I said to you was, it should be the parent that gets to set the nurture, because you're the one that has to answer for it when they're older.
that's
Period.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
So when you have, which I think what you were pointing out, this undue influence of other people trying to nurture in the same way, you should have a say in that, because you're the one that has to answer for it, not, like aunties, uncles, cousins, grandparents. You would say, look, I appreciate that you're willing to get them the gift. Is it okay if I just maybe set the gift to the side? I want to see how they go with like that.
Yeah.
I'm trying to nurture them in a specific way, and I'm just trying to be open to that. Is that okay with you? That's how it should have been the conversation.
Yes, but my conversation, again, you take a different approach, right? I'm very direct, you're very soft. It's
I don't know about that sometimes, but yeah.
sure, but
Some people may not agree.
you will take a higher ground
I try.
9 times out of 10. And
try.
I will take an aggressive ground. I will take a lower ground 9 times out of 10, right? But that was my reference point, right? It was like, why this and why not that, right?
I think it's a fair conversation.
And I asked for that, right? And that conversation was a bigger conversation, but it led down to the realization that you're right. And I'm like, but I'm not trying to be right. There's no right or wrong in this.
Right.
Right. Because there's not.
Well, then it's not a moral question.
Correct. There's not right or wrong. I'm asking you why and why you didn't. Because now you have to think about it, right? Because now you're choosing the path and they're not choosing the path, right? He didn't walk in here and say, hey, I want this plant. I want that flower. He didn't do that. Your influence is what's dictating what this is. And it's not his. He didn't ask for it.
But that's a good opportunity for you to do exactly what we're trying to do on this chat. Notice what you notice, person.
Yeah.
You chose. Why? And do you understand that these choices may not be or maybe they should require a little more reflection before you do it? Because you have to understand that you are part of the nurture of that child as well with me. But that's also you having that conversation because you're the one standing for it.
Correct.
Like,
I think
know
that
it's
is
gonna be
such a
my fault
great.
later.
I think that's such a great term, right? And I probably will assimilate the nurture side of it, right? Because this person was one of the people that referred to me as a toxic masculine person at one point, and I'm just like, it is so much more than that, but you don't see it that way. And
But
then
they're right.
sure,
Why?
because they get their own perception.
Because it's their perception.
Right.
So yes, you're right. How are you ever? And again, now we're bumping up against not toxic masculinity. It's the more philosophical thing. How do you change people that don't want to see something different? How?
True, and that's what and for me, it's like you and I agree. You have to come to, again, not to use a specific term, but you have to come to Jesus on your own, right? Like you have to walk to the water, right? I can't give you it. You have to have to come here, right? I'm also not going to expect you to meet me where I'm at, right? But you can't expect me to meet you where you're at,
Yeah.
right? Like, and we both agree on that,
Yep.
right? Like, I'm not going to lower my standards to meet you where you're at, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not going to expect you to raise yours to meet me, but we can meet somewhere,
Sure.
right? That was my conversation for her. This is not to convince her that I'm not a toxic masculine man. This is for me to give her some understanding of where she may have the opportunity to learn that the way she's defining that is not the way to define it. And the way that she's weaponized it towards me, it may affect other people, right? Like my kids. Don't do that. And I didn't ask her to not buy the toy. I didn't ask her to not do anything.
Right.
I only threw it out there in conversation, and we had really good back and forth. And she learned some things about me. She had some misconceptions, and those changed.
Well, that's where you broke through.
Correct.
Creating the safe space for a hard conversation to be had, or maybe not hard, but uncomfortable for somebody. And at the other side of that was what? Better understanding of each other.
Right.
Fair?
Yes.
That is then the secret and the tool that you're pointing out.
Yeah, 1,000%.
Which is why are we, and hopefully we're creating that right now through this conversation, that why are you not able to create these types of conversations with people for the sake of coming out the other side, knowing each other better, not to be right. Nobody has to be right.
Well, that's where you and I, again,
Disagree?
No, we both enjoy being right, but we love being right.
Sure.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone enjoys that. The constructive conversations, the difficult conversations, the, lively debates, all those things are super important for what this is, because people aren't talking about it. They're weaponizing it, and they're not using constructive conversations to come out on the other side. Where I think every conversation that you and I have, regardless of how emotional, passionate, polarizing it may be, we come to a better understanding afterwards, and we don't have to agree. We don't agree all the time, right? We disagree frequently, but we will understand each other's position.
So go back to what you said. How are we right then?
Well, because we're right for ourselves. I'm right for me. I have, again, this is my belief system. I believe what I believe, right? And I'm not projecting it onto you, and I'm not trying to have undue influence on what you believe. I think we can both coexist. I think we can both be in the same space, right? Like, this is like that I think Dana White says it really well.
What did you say?
When he talks about, like, you're just a bad person, right? If you don't like me because of the way I voted, that's a you problem, right? Like, I'm not here to tell you what to do, and I'm not here to not be your friend. I'm going to be your friend because I like you. If I chose to not be your friend because you're a bad person, then I'm just not going to be your friend because you're a bad person. It has nothing to do with who you voted for, right? And there's he's said that multiple times and lots of recordings of that kind of just generality, but I believe that, right? Like, we can both live in this space together and have really constructive, personal, private conversations and be vulnerable and open, and still come out of this being friends and actually becoming closer because of those things that we don't agree with, right? Because it could have been not changing the opinion, but influencing the other side, right? Like, I have more clarity on how you felt. I have more clarity on how you feel.
Correct. So it wasn't a conversation from like an ideology perspective. We can't have those.
Right.
That's why politics and religion are not, there's no ability to reach the other side objectively.
Right.
Right? Because it's an ideology. So what you have stated is like, you love being right. I love being right. I don't know if that's an accurate way to portray it, but let me explain.
Okay.
If you enter a conversation with me to be right, we shouldn't be having this conversation, because it's usually a debate. You're here to convince me on something that you believe is true. I don't enter a conversation with you that way. Why? I don't enter to convince you my way. I enter a conversation, as you explained, to have the conversation and to share my thought about it. I now heard your thought on that. You know what? It influenced me. I'm thinking about it a little bit differently. You know what? I'm considering some new items based on what you told me. This is good. somebody that enters a conversation to be right,
Yeah, and maybe not being
There's-
right. Yeah, for sure. I think we both enjoy that people will accept our point of views, right? Because I do think that we can
but remember,
describe
you
our
can
position.
only speak for you because he keeps
Yes.
speaking for me. So when you say that, you have to change that conversation and say, I like to be right. And then you would say, but no, Steve, I think you like being right too. And I would say, what? No, I don't enter the conversation to be right.
That's fair.
But it is nice that by the time that we go through this conversation, if we make it out to the other side and you understand me better, hear how I presented that. I'm happy. I enjoy that. I enjoy that you understand me better at the other side. Even if that means you disagree with me,
Yes.
that's okay. But I didn't enter to be right.
Yeah, and I agree with that. Again,
that make sense?
Yeah, being right was probably the wrong term, right? Again, getting people to understand my position and not agreeing with it, but
Just to understand.
yeah, to accept that it exists in that form.
And that's the purpose of this conversation.
Right.
And why we are recording. It's for people to get that. Look, toxic masculinity, no problem. Let's talk about it. What's toxic? Why is it toxic? Why does it have to be masculine? Right?
Yeah.
All you're saying is, can we have the safe space to talk about it and to pick it apart?
Well, and I
Not
also
to
think,
argue, just so that we understand each other better.
right, and this is a societal thing, right? And I think society has to change the way that we approach masculinity, period, because everyone wants the what's a guy's guy? Not a cowboy. Everybody wants a cowboy, right? But
Says
you don't
who?
want. I'm just using that as a generality, right? Like you have those archetypes of people, right?
Okay.
And people want a masculine man. So you have this masculine person, but you don't want the masculine traits that go along with it, right? Because now if I was leading someone down a road the other day
Okay.
that was kind of talking about, I asked this person to give me 3 people that you think are masculine. Okay, they gave me 3 people.
Oh, I
said,
was like, you're asking me?
no,
Okay,
no,
got
sorry.
it.
Give me 3 people. They gave me 3 people that thought were masculine. I said, okay, why don't you pick this person, or this person? Well, because you didn't give me any options. No. It's not pointed. Why didn't you pick these people? I gave you these 3 people.
Right.
Why didn't you pick him? Well, because this. Perfect. Why didn't you pick him? Because this. Great. Why didn't you pick him? Why didn't you pick him? Because he's too emotional. Great. Why didn't you pick him? Well, he's emotionally closed off. Ah, that's a gotcha. So if I'm a man and I walk in and I'm too emotional, I whine, I complain, I constantly negative, right? Everything, the world's ending, it's always my fault, and it's always someone else's fault, and all these other things. Then I walk in, I'm the other guy, and so I have nothing to say, right? Like I just can't connect with you that way.
Mhm.
Like I can't share my emotions. I can't tell you why I'm angry. I can't tell you why I'm happy. I can't tell you anything. So you don't like that person because that's not masculine for you because he's emotionally closed off, and that person's not masculine because he's too emotional. It's a moving target, and it always has been, because it's not what you or I want. It's not what you or I think. It's what society thinks. It's what society defines it as, and then we use that as a stereotype. And
How are you going to ever fix that?
you can't. You have to find a way to accept people for who they are, and we have to accept us, and we have to stop using. It's the Morgan Freeman example of, I'm not going to call you a black or a white man, and you're not going to call me a black man. We're just going to be, we're just people.
Yeah.
Right? You have to stop stereotyping people or classifying people in a specific way, and we just have to be people, right? It's not about having 10 genders or 2 genders or any of these things. It's defining people for being people. We're good human beings. You and I always discuss things that way. Like, I just want to be a good person, right? I want to be a better human being for everyone. And we can sit here and you and I can laugh and cry and hug and we can do all those things. And, I can sit there and hold your hand and be completely comfortable in that moment when you and I can connect that way, right? And we just tend to define things by sexuality, right? And it's just so crazy to me. It's just that orientation.
What if you said that different? What if you said the people you surround yourself yourself with or that you have been exposed to, you are picking up that they define it by maybe social norms. And you might believe that it's a social norm because there seems to be some sort of consensus around the people with me.
Right.
That's why I'm saying it's a social norm. Is that truly the accepted social norm? It's not. It's not. Because why? Go down south, talk to some Southern people. They got some different attitudes. Then take that understanding of people.
Well, and go to Spain or go to France or
Go to Kentucky.
Yeah.
It's different people. Then go to what? Kansas City. Then go to Portland. Everywhere you go, anybody within that close vicinity will give you a different definition of what a man is and a woman is.
Yeah.
So there's never going to be alignment on that. Right? And why am I saying this is because you have to hear this. There's never going to be alignment to it. And if you find yourself being around people that have that, right? That conviction, it should be this way. That's okay. You get to have that conviction. I just don't know if I am probably the right people to be around you. If you are a person that says, hey, Steve, maybe it's somebody that is a male into a female transition, and they say, hey, my name's John, but can you call me Jasmine? Yeah, no problem. Like, if you want me to address you like that, I have no issue.
Yeah.
If that's just the name that you have, I will more than likely never say Jasmine, but I might say, this is how I talk. Like, hey, babe, how are you? How are you doing today? Hey, sweetheart. Right? Because you prefer a feminine, greeting. But if you're going to tell me and say, hey, today call me this, tomorrow call me that, tomorrow I have this pronoun that you must address me by, I'm like, look, I'm not going to go and call the doctor. I might just call him by his name. Granted, you're a doctor. We both get that. But I'm not going to call you doctor, whatever, every time.
Right.
This is a choice I'm making. But you've asked me to call you doctor. That's fucking great. I'm going to call you what I want. But if I have to address you a specific way, that's where I have personal problem. I say, I get to be me. Don't tell me what to do.
Right.
Like, I'll be myself. I will always consider the request that you made. But at the end of the day, I have to be me. So going back to kind of how we started this with these people have this social normality, you are just going to have that conversation. Say, it's great that you would prefer that of me. Not sure I can meet that for you. Right. And let them deal with that and say, yeah, fine. You out of our circle. That's okay. I'm not going to be in that circle if that's what it requires. But you were very clear why. You never said, kick me out of your circle. They decided to do that. So what am I saying? That's the difference between people choosing tribes, because I don't like hearing what you say. Oh, no, not going to hang out with Matt's tribe.
Right.
That's me self-selecting away from you. But when somebody kicks you out of their tribe because they disagree with you, that's a different story. You got to stay within your truth.
Right.
And you have to stand for that. And if some people don't like it, that's okay.
Yeah, and you and I have had that conversation recently where it's like you're trying to create a better pod, right? Like we want to be in a collective, right? Like we do. We want people, like as human beings, like we want to be part of a group, right? We don't want to be the lone wolf thing, right? Like we don't want to be just off alone and...
Yeah. I mean, I want to surround myself with other people that genuinely seek to be a better version of themselves, whatever that looks like.
Right.
And we're all on our different path at different stages. So I can't say your path looks very different than mine. I don't care to be around you. Well, no, I know it looks different. And, maybe you're way ahead of me. That's okay. Just, Matt, this is where I'm at. Kind of figuring it out.
But you have, 20-year-old kids and I have 5-year-old kids. Like we're at different points too.
Yeah. But that's the point. It's I can't give a comparison of my life and my nurture to yours and say it's very different. So you're wrong.
Right.
Or, hey, the choice you just made, absolutely wrong. You just don't understand why.
Yeah.
But I'm here to tell you that you're wrong. You're like, no, we have to have an approach to say, look, just different than mine. Not sure I understand it, but maybe, hey, if you're open to it, can we have a conversation about it?
Right.
If that's okay. Yeah, cool. Like, let's have that conversation. And that's what pulls us all the way through. That conversations have to be had for people that their interest is not to be right. It's to just understand a little bit better. And it's okay to disagree. I don't agree with you. Great. That's okay.
Yeah.
Did you understand me a little better? Absolutely.
Right. And again,
We hit the mark.
correct. And that's what this was for, right?
Yeah.
It was like, so it's not that, again, I'm not trying to convince anybody that I'm not a toxic person. I am trying to convince everyone, but I want you to believe it though. Like, I don't want you to come to it, you know, I don't want you to walk in here with the same biases, right? Like, that's the term I used recently, is we're all walking into this equation. Like when I said, why did you select this person instead of this person? Right. Is because we all walk into this with our own bias, right? Whatever that bias is, right? Because we were raised differently, right? Like however we were nurtured when we were younger, or how we were influenced by other people at certain times, like we come in with certain biases, and we all have biases. And one of those things where I kind of referenced the emasculation in that conversation was because it doesn't matter who the person is, right? But it's something that you and I'm very mindful, right? Because I learned something about you recently. And as a group, we're very much your mom, right?
Oh, yeah. As a joke.
Yeah, because we are. But I'm really not personally not sensitive to that because I think it's hilarious, right? I'm sensitive for other people because your mom did pass away, right? And I don't know how you're going to respond or react to that. And I don't think that you care, but I'm more mindful of it when I use it, and I use other things. Like I'm like, your wife, instead of saying your mom. And you don't have a wife. But that's why I use it, because I use that as the term to fill in that gap, right? And I said, you know, there's ways that we communicate to people, right? Because like your term when we started this was like, you would call someone a bitch.
Yeah.
I said, let me ask you a question. You didn't pick one of these three people. What do you refer to that person as? I said, and I've never thought about this until right now. I don't know. Call him baby boy. Every person that we conversate about that we think is not masculine, we call him baby boy. So we do that to emasculate them. We do.
You said that?
Mm-hmm.
To who? To this person?
Yep.
Okay.
Because I believe it.
Okay.
I said, and I've never come to that realization until right now in the middle of this conversation. And this was me prepping my brain for having this conversation with you. I'm like, I do that.
You and this person agreed that you both use that to
100%.
demasculate or emasculate somebody?
Yes.
That's such a weird...
It is. But here's the difference, right? If I walk in here and I'm talking to you and I call you baby girl, it's different than calling you baby boy. And I've probably never called you baby boy. Probably not. 99% sure. But I have said baby girl a couple times. Like, yo, baby girl. Because that's what I say. It's gender neutral to me. It's like saying, yo, dog. What's going on? How's it going, homie? All of that stuff. And I do it subconsciously. I can tell you that I'll never do that again. And neither will she. Just won't.
I don't know if
because
you can
it's
make
so,
that promise because you
it
are
is,
what
though,
you do,
because
not what
it's
you say
so
you
mindful now, though. Because it was like an aha moment. It was like an epiphany that happened. And when I said it, we were both like, fuck. Yep. 100%. Just can't do it. Right? And that's for me.
But that's your choice.
Yeah, that's for me. But I'm like, it is. And again, whether that is playful or not doesn't matter to me, because it doesn't. That is 100% the same reason why people call someone a bitch. It's because you're trying to emasculate that person.
Maybe. We can't speak for them. We're not them.
I get it, but that is the way I feel.
Sure.
And again, it was really, really hard for me to go back and unpack that for a minute. And I'm just like, whew, I do that a lot.
But you did. That's the secret. That's the moment that you now finally go back to and say, I went back to look at something that I do. There was something that came up for me. I'll take that learning. And because of that, I'll choose to be different. There's Matt 2.0.5, because you made that small little increment of like better. Great. All of us should do that. But I shouldn't hear shit from you for using baby girl with other people. Why? It's my choice.
Oh yeah, no, and I never would.
I know you wouldn't. I'm just explaining that. That's saying
correct. Yeah, for sure.
You've now reached that point where you are in a position to say, I'm making a decision for myself and I feel great about it. Something that I learned from me.
Yeah, it's always the baby boy.
Yeah.
Right? It's one of those things, right? Where it's like, oh, it's like you're so innocent, right? Like it's like I don't think for me, I don't think you're making this as playful as you think you are, right? Because I don't think you are. I think you are making it. You're making that reference. This is me speaking for me.
Yeah.
You're making that reference to be toxic, right? Because you are. You're openly challenging that person and you're looking for a reaction. That's not okay. Don't do that.
Again, I don't know if that's toxic behavior, but I would say that, you know what? They're more than likely trying to get a rise out of somebody.
No, yeah, that
sure.
is, yeah, for me. That's again, when I do that, that was again what I have an intent with that.
Okay.
And it was really weird, right? Because I never had viewed it that way. And it took me, again, going through and trying to be mindful with all of this and trying to think about what I really wanted to articulate. And that came out. And I'm just like, right? How many conversations have we had that's happened, right? Like where we've just walked on a path and we're just like, oh, yeah, that's great, right?
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be negative. It doesn't have to be like that life changing or altering. It's just like, we both come to the same realization or we both come to the same spot with different perspective. And it's just like, that's great. And that's what this was for the two of us. And I'm like, I'm really grateful for that, right? Because now we can have that conversation also and just kind of say, look, why do we perceive it that way? Like, why do I want to not do that anymore? Because for me, it's always about the intent, right? If you walk into this without the intent, for me, because it's like from a malicious standpoint, like if I don't feel like you walked in maliciously, I'm not going to take offense to it. If I do think you walked in maliciously, I'm going to respond in a certain way. Again, not with violence or anything like that, but I'm just going to respond with as equally as a malicious intent to see what the reaction is, right? Because then you can kind of suss out if it was deliberate or not, right? It could have been accidental. It could have been meaningless. It could have been
but how
playful.
are you ever going to get to that?
What do you mean?
How are you ever going to suss any of this out about what the intent of that other person was?
I just think through relationships, just through getting to know people better.
But somebody's going to have the patience to impact that. Whether it's you or that other person, somebody has to create that space.
Correct. But I think that I've learned better how to do that. And I've learned who I want to do that with.
So you would say, I'm having better tools in my toolbox to create that space for others.
Right.
Hey, why did you just call me that? Right.
But
setting up the space. Like, it's okay. You can tell me this is why I asked. I wanted to know why you did. It's okay to answer. It's not me trying to get a rise out of you.
Right. We talked about this on New Year's Eve. I had a chef and he wrote a menu, right? Was the menu good or bad? It was okay. It was good, right? It was what everybody wanted, right? And it was it's a special menu for New Year's Eve. We sold out. Never sold out before. We sold out. He's super proud of that, right? So what I told him is you should be really proud. I said, but here's why. You made all the food that people want. And holidays are for the people, right? We want to make all these people that happy came in here. Everyone that came in here should be happy.
Yeah.
They came in for that menu because it was food they wanted. It's not the time to be cute. It's not the time to be playful. It's not the time to be, overly inventive, right? It's not lamb brain sausage day, right? That's a special for a different week. This is not the time and the place for that. This is New Year's Eve. Let's give them what they want.
Mm-hmm.
The only thing we missed is we didn't do potatoes. We did steak, no potatoes. No one complained. Everyone was really happy. You should be really proud of that, right? He's like, I am. I hope you learned a little bit, right? I didn't give you any feedback on this menu. I said, what do you want to do? I said, I want to do this. Perfect. I think it's great. The only thing I told you to do was not do a salad, right? Not do a cold course. It's going to be cold outside. Just do 2 hot appetizers, essentially, right? Yeah. So do 2 hot courses and then a hot entree, and then the dessert was cold. But he did seafood, steak, and foie gras with truffles. Everyone loved it, right? I'm like, you gave them everything they wanted. They wanted scallops, they wanted crab, and they wanted steak, right? You checked all those boxes, and that's things people really like and find value in. and you sold out. I said, as a chef, we always want that blame to be on somebody else. If you had done a crazier menu and you walked in, you'd come in, and if you didn't sell any, you'd blame the servers. Oh, they didn't sell it. Oh, they don't care. Oh, they don't support. Oh, they don't all these other things. So, okay. No one wanted the food. That's you. It's not them.
Right.
Right? You expect them to sell your bullshit. They don't have to because no one wanted it. Do you know how many people had to sell your menu right now? None. It sold itself. It's what people want.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that to me was super impactful for that experience. And that was like, again, for me, this is the mentoring side, right? This is the supportive side. This is like, you can't project that negativity onto people. You have to take ownership of it. Now you've got the ability and the understanding to take the ownership of it. And now that's your evolution, right? Like now you can walk into this and say, I can utilize that mentality for the next thing. And we had a really great conversation after that, right? And that was like probably one of the more prouder moments I had for me in this individual, because he's never showed me that kind of emotion, right? He's genuinely happy, right? He's never showed me that genuine happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And even through text, you could feel it. And then when we had the conversation in person, you could just see the look on his face, and he was just super proud and super happy. And I'm like, that's great, man. Like, that's for you. It has nothing to do with me. I gave you feedback now, days later, because you didn't put potatoes on that plate. Maybe something to think about next time, right? It's the only change I would have made, right? Because you gave people what they wanted. And it has nothing to do with preference. Like if you put curry on it and people don't want curry, that's a preference. They wanted scallops because they want scallops.
So
they
why
want
did this
crab.
resonate with you?
Because it was me taking the opportunity to give this person a little bit more than I probably would have previously, right? Like I tend to give people what I think they need, not what they need, right? And this was me kind of taking that step back and saying, hi, allow this person the space to create what they want to create without influence,
Mm-hmm.
and allow them to see how it can transpire, right? How it can end positively, right? Because I've always been in that protection mode, right? It's not that I know everything. It's that I know that this is not what, again, if he came out with something crazy like lamb brain sausage, I'd be like, this is not what people are looking for
Right.
on New Year's Eve, brother, right? But we've had these conversations hundreds of times, and I always give that tweak, right? It's like, I don't know that I would have done that for the scallops. I would probably do this. And then
Right.
someone does that, right? It's like when someone's like, hey, we need a wine dinner menu. I'm like, well, write it, right? And then I will tweak it. But everyone's like, well, you want to write one too? And it's like, I just have to stop doing that, right? Because I want them to have the ability, right? Because that's me being overbearing, right? Like that's just me being too much of that micromanager.
Right.
And this gives him the space to kind of make his mistake and learn from it, right? And this just, again, this turned out to be really, really great, but it was that learning experience for him too, to say, look, I can grow in this and understand like this is the way forward. And I see why the other times that we've tried it differently, it hasn't been as successful. So I just think those things are important too, to share with people, where like you can have those connections and there's always an opportunity for more growth with that person, but you have to be willing to give your vulnerability, right? Because there was an opportunity that this wasn't going to work, right? Because there were components that I thought could have been better. Leave it alone.
Yeah. And I think you and I, maybe that's a good one for kind of like for us to end, because I would love to have another conversation with you about maybe just your journey into understanding what vulnerability is and how you just used it to truly acknowledge somebody in a way that maybe they've never been acknowledged before.
Yeah, man.
Cool.
For sure.
Let's do that. Awesome, brother. Thanks for coming by.
Love you.
Love you too.